1, 2, 3, 4.
In this podcast, you will hear Knights of Vader. Knights of Vader includes, but is not limited to, talk of Star Wars, not ray guns. We can't truly prepare you for the joke that follows this song, but hey, we gave it a try. So here's the Knights of Vader. Crystal Fox reports they are divided. Prequel, sequel, hate and love they fight. I know that we are just musicians hired, and their time is up. So here's the Knights of Vader.
I'm the spy.
A big thank you to An Insperiority Complex for providing our theme song. It is January 5th, 2020. My name is Zach Weber, and I'm joined by Zenger.
Look for my book in stores, everyone. My life as an unknown podcaster.
And Rus.
That's my line.
Hello.
And welcoming him back to Knights of Vader, the 5th or 6th premier Star Wars Canadian vintage collector, Chris Porteous.
Happy to join you guys tonight.
Yes, folks, we are doing another Rise of Skywalker episode. 2 years ago, we had Last Jedi January. Now we have awkward sounding sentence January, Rise of something month. I don't know. It's all sorts of Rise of Skywalker nonsense. Who knows anymore? But no, I figured we haven't, again, having everybody here. I know Rob and I talked about Rise of Skywalker last week, but it's been roughly, 3 weeks now since we talked about it, Zenger, Rus, and I, and we definitely don't know Chris's opinion, but a couple weeks ago, Chris actually wrote something quite profound in the Knights of Vader Facebook group, asking me what I thought of the film.
Oh, wait, still... How's their sound?
What?
He's trying to eat me.
It's Battlegrounds. He's fired it up.
Yeah, I fired up Battlegrounds, and I didn't realize there was going to be sound. This is awkward.
Rus, just because he keeps making sounds doesn't mean you have to match him beat for beat.
Oh, that's why.
Okay, thank you, Zanger. I'm glad to see your mute button doesn't work. No, but Chris had a rather profound question for me in the Knights of Vader Facebook group about just relating the sequel trilogy to the prequels and the original trilogy, and how we would kind of rank these films or rate them relative to what Lucas had done. And Chris was always going to be invited back on for a Rise of Skywalker episode, but that kind of really greased the wheels, and I figured let's get him on here ASAP. So with that being said, Chris, do you remember what you said, or should I bring it up on Facebook, or remind our audience, or tell our audience?
Well, I don't know how.
Tell them with your words.
I don't. I don't know how specific you guys want to get, but the gist of it. You can elaborate if this is insufficient for you. But the gist of it is, it's hard for me to really look at these as a continuation of the other 6 movies, purely because you have one author and now you have a bunch of cooks in the kitchen. It's not even that it got taken over by a singular author who's sort of guiding the story. It's draft after revision with who knows how many hands in the pot, right? So I'm kind of at peace with not viewing them as a continuation of that narrative.
I can kind of see that because Lucas just, having that strong hand, no one stepped up and took that strong hand with these. JJ seemed like he wanted to in the last one. I'm sure you've talked about all those leaks and the things that he wanted to do with it. But, there's no, guiding hand that thought this whole thing out. So that's fair.
There's just too many winks at the audience in relation to, production elements that we shouldn't know about. It almost feels like, you guys remember how Carrie Fisher died? Check out what we were able to do with that. Snoke got killed in the last one. They're publicly telling us that the Emperor coming back wasn't part of the plan, days before we see the movie. It doesn't really make you feel like somebody sort of masterminded the whole thing.
It's like they planned it all in the weekend and told us it was done for years.
It's like
that was the original ready. Prequels.
The public wasn't ready for the Son of Mortis yet.
Well, at least with the prequels, you can go all the way back to 1976 and see a real loose summary of them in the first couple pages of the Star Wars novelization. So there was seeds there. It wasn't made up quite as last minute as these were.
Like close.
And you got a point about those little nods to the production, because stuff like that, like, it just takes me out of the fact that I'm just watching a movie. And maybe just being older and those, watching Star Wars as a kid, it burns in your brain.
It's definitely a factor.
Just kind of aware that this is not a fantasy movie I'm sucked into. It is just a movie.
Okay, boomer.
He was just acknowledging that he is a boomer. That's pretty advanced for a boomer, It's
too advanced, actually.
Oh no, he's self-aware.
Yeah. Skynet's active, yeah.
Oh no, not this.
But okay, but the question, to answer Chris's question though, about the thing about Palpatine not being planned, and I know, Chris, you listen to the podcast.
Sorry.
The Palpatine thing, yes, my condolences to everybody who listens on a weekly basis. In that Aftermath Empire's End book, they reference Palpatine. It does set up a lot. I'm not sure maybe if they were seeding a lot of stuff just in case they had contingencies. We're going to seed things here. We're going to seed things there. We're going to seed things that people are never going to know. But if that is the case, I haven't found anything else being because what was that thing they did? What was it when The Last Jedi was coming out? There was some promotional book talking about Snoke's long lost apprentice. And that was all. Remember, everybody was thinking that was going to be Matt Smith's character. Do you remember that?
Wait, I forgot about Matt Smith. Where was he?
Not in this.
So
Russ,
is that a real rumor? Is the Matt Smith one bogus? Do we want to rank the reliability of the rumors that are out there right now?
Well, it's weird. The fandom's in an odd place right now because everybody's so enamored with the notion that making Star Wars and Jedi Pax got everything so right. And there's a lot of conspiracies being thrown around that there's some insider at Bad Robot that was very disgruntled as to what Lucasfilm was doing to the film. And this was their quote unquote revenge.
I will have my revenge.
We've never had I can't think of the last time a movie of this caliber was spoiled this far in advance. And clearly it was somebody who was deep into the film that knew everything.
Palpatine himself?
I don't know. The dark side is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Like Twitter.
You mean? But no, so Chris, the whole thing with Matt Smith, the rumor is Matt Smith was supposed to be the son of Mortis, and Russ kind of joked the public wasn't ready for that yet.
But your kids are going to love it.
Oh, man. It's a Back to the Future reference.
But that's the thing I keep trying to figure out with this film is that I guess, Chris, just to get everybody kind of a baseline for you, what do you think of this film? What's your overall opinion of it?
Oh man! All right, so
solid start.
All right.
Solid start.
It's
sir.
I would say it's the most entertaining of these three for me. I kind of view Last Jedi as the closest one to being an actual film out of the three. But this one is kind of if I really try to not think about it, this one keeps me entertained, much like what I imagine people feel when they watch Avengers films, which I don't.
God bless you.
Oh, what an amazing world you must live in.
So
wow, that came off harsh.
No, you're not wrong.
Okay.
This is Chris isn't wrong. I was thinking about that. This is kind of Star Wars' equivalent to Avengers Endgame, where it's none of this makes sense, but it's a lot of fun. So let's just go with it. Thank you, Zenger. But
they forget that that's not that Star Wars isn't that kind of film. That these movies aren't just going to be thrown away. They're not. At least they're not supposed to be just thrown away. If they're put in the saga we all care for, we're supposed to pine over these and figure out all the meaning of it forever. But if it doesn't mean anything, then you can't do that.
Okay, but has there ever been a bigger don't think about it, just go with it than when the Hobbit is explaining how Palpatine might be back? It's he rhymes off three totally random possible explanations, and they're yeah, whatever, he's back though, so let's not continue that
because they have to deal with the problem at hand. They can't sit there and figure out why he's back. That just wastes time.
I mean, the obvious initial thought would be, well, it's obviously not true. because they had those like in Battlefront, they had those robots. Like, we're talking about Star Wars, they could fake Palpatine's voice, right? Like, they got technology. Why would you instantly believe that it's real in the first place? It just got me right there. It's like, he's definitely alive. We heard one voice recording of him.
Does everyone remember the storyline of the Battlefront 2 game?
Yeah, well, it was that division of stormtroopers that.
I'm seriously asking. Does anyone remember the storyline of that game?
I remember the opening stuff. I don't think I ever got that far in the campaign.
Well,
I do know the Emperor was making people do some stuff.
Emperor robots with a hologram face.
Yes.
That float around and yell at people.
Yeah, I think that combined with the chapter of that book with all the stuff about Jakku and this, what was it, a lighthouse to the moon or something? Didn't they have some kind of like a telescope?
A lighthouse to the moon.
Yeah, some kind of Sith temple on Jakku, like 5 blocks away from where Rey was hanging out that whole time.
I wonder if that has anything to do with that giant thing over there. It's just a big black pyramid floating with a beam coming out of the top. Nah,
there's so many things I want to get your guys' opinion on, but like it's like I apologize for the lack of structure.
You're warned. You should be warned ahead of time of what you're about to open.
Okay, but just starting from like right at the beginning. Why do you guys think they avoided showing Vader's castle even though he's right outside the door?
I think I have a reason for that. And Chris, do you have the visual dictionary?
I haven't seen it up here in Canada for sale, so I might pick it up and see it.
So everyone at home, open to page 5.
No,
isn't that neat? What's on that page? Because I'm sure it has nothing to do with what we're about to talk about.
No, it has to do with Vader's castle. Because I'm glad he brought it up.
Is that on page 5?
It probably isn't.
Okay,
no, the first 20 pages of the visual dictionary is kind of like recapping the sequel trilogy. It's really weird. It's for people who didn't buy the first 2. I guess you have a little snapshot of everything. But no, Vader's.
It's because they didn't know how the movie was going to be edited, so they had to take up some real estate up front just in case.
Interesting. The movie being edited badly.
Well, they just had no idea what the movie was going to be when they had to finalize the book. That's all. That's all it is.
But the Vader's castle thing is in the visual dictionary. They talk about that the people that Kylo Ren is slaughtering are Vader acolytes. They're like weird sort of like devotees to Vader. And again, I don't know why they cut that sequence, because apparently in the visual dictionary, they even reference it. They say Vader's castle is in a state of disrepair and almost like, if you've ever seen one of those abandoned mental hospitals, that's kind of the picture they paint, that really it's decrepit and it's falling apart.
Oh, and like Cropsy or something.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why they didn't do that, but somebody I've become really plugged into Raylo Twitter, and I absolutely love it so much.
Oh my God.
Those people are my brethren.
Stop.
I dig
Everyone,
them so much.
Are they hanging in there? Can we just get a quick Raylo update from Twitter? Are they okay?
I think they're as of right now, but just a week and a half ago by the time everybody's
listening to
this.
Stupid. It's going to be something so stupid.
No, they're organizing a Twitter campaign to get Ben Solo Dessert Better trending on Twitter. I think as of now, but I could be wrong.
Oh my.
I hate Twitter.
The Vader's castle thing is that based on a lot of the stuff I've been reading on Twitter, it seemed like JJ, this is my own interpretation combined with what I've been reading online, was that Kylo Ren is slaughtering acolytes of the original trilogy. These are people that are worshiping Vader blindly. They refuse to see anything but the original trilogy, and he's literally just mowing right through them in their weird devotion to something that really they shouldn't value that highly. And someone said, Disney might have seen that as something, because there's a lot of stuff too. I think I'm not sure, it's not a hugely popular YouTube channel, but it's an account I think called George Rickall Smith, and he did an entire thing about just Disney's lack of structure with the sequel trilogy and how they were too hands off. The video makes some interesting points, but at the end of the day, I think the diagnosis is correct in one respect, but I think the resolution that the person offers is different than what it should be. They think the reason why the sequel trilogy is a mess, like we kind of already mentioned, was because Disney was too hands off with it. I think it's the exact opposite. I think the sequel trilogy became a mess because Disney meddled with it too much. I think you have Force Awakens was relatively left alone. Rogue One, they meddled and they got a Hail Mary out of that. Last Jedi to this day is the inexplicable mystery of Disney Star Wars, and that it's the film that had really no problems behind the scenes, yet has the most quote unquote divisive reaction. And we all know how Solo turned out. But to answer your question, the kind of
no, we don't. No one watched it.
No, nobody watched The Last Jedi.
I meant Solo, but okay.
That too. But no, the Vader's castle thing, I think there was something to that they didn't like. I think there was something going on in that sequence that either because remember, Vader's castle is being used for a bunch of things in other ancillary media. They're thinking about the VR thing is a huge project that for the most part, I don't want to say is flopping, but nobody cares about it. I don't think anybody's buying a $400 Oculus Rift headset for Vader Immortal.
Yeah,
which
that's some high end stuff for your average Star Wars guy. I've seen commercials that I'm like, yeah, it looks amazing, but I'll probably never get that thing.
Well, not only that, but you can just watch, if you're interested in the storyline, you just watch the whole thing on YouTube like 5 minutes after each chapter gets dropped. So if you're just interested in from a canon perspective and you're not big on VR, it's available for free rather immediately.
You can just pretend in your room while you're playing. Take your screensaver out from around.
That might highlight the limited number of options that there actually are in the game.
He's not wrong, people.
No, he's not.
I was going to pick that anyway.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think there's something going on with Vader's castle with Lucasfilm where it was like, we other things are using this. You can't be using this right now. And that's what because again, that sequence lasts for 30 seconds. We see the ships flying toward the planet. He's on the planet mowing people down. And people have done some freeze frames of that sequence. That sequence is really graphic. He's cutting people's arms off. I think it's the first time in a while, I think probably in the Disney era where we actually see some like major violence in Star Wars, like in the feature film.
Wait, should I not yay that?
You can yay whatever you want.
It felt like that Last Jedi Praetorian Guard hole segment when they were popping guys through the face. That seemed to when it started to amp up to me as far as lightsaber violence in the films, the way it's portrayed.
Do you think the fact that Vader's castle is only been presented in either the comics and Rogue One has anything to do with why they didn't want to show it? Like, do you think they wanted to avoid people who have only been paying attention to the main films from wondering what that is?
Possibly.
Maybe. Yeah, I think the Rogue One connection is hard for the, common Star Wars fan who would be like, when did that take place? What was that part anyway? Because it's not like, I don't know. It's not like that creepy old guy that everyone loved from Rogue One is in it to guide us through.
Zach, you're like pretty much an expert on all of the Emperor's like little cronies, like those old dudes who follow him around in Return of the Jedi, right? Like that one book you keep referencing that talks about Palpatine's return. That's one of those guys, right?
Well, his name is Yup Tashu, and he's not one of the dignitaries in Return of the Jedi. Yeah, I know.
So, but is the guy in Rogue One of the dignitaries in Return of the Jedi, or is that yet another one of these guys?
What was his name? I forget what his name is off the top of my head, but I can see him.
Russ, we're doing this all wrong. You just put Zack on the spot with knowledge references. That's how you really get to him, not this foolish joking around that we do constantly.
He's got a great name, too. Man, we got a race to find it.
No, but he was. I don't think Vader's assistant is. I don't think he's supposed to be. I think he could be, but I think when it comes to the Emperor's like quasi like oh god, Chris, you know the words for them. How they describe in Return of the Jedi? His advisors,
his McClunkies.
That one behind the scenes picture of them all doing like a hip hop album cover is pretty amazing. Oh my god, that's a great photo.
I was just about to say them all doing the Wu-Tang symbol, but you beat me to it with, the real thing that happened.
It was a lot more general, but I can imagine a Wu-Tang symbol in that shot. It should be photoshopped in. Somebody should do that.
I'll get to work on it immediately.
But I do think that the advisors of Vader are not Vader, the advisors of Palpatine. Like, did you know the episode, The World Between Worlds on Rebels, and you have the Malcolm McDowell character,
right?
That's the caliber. That's the caliber of what Yup Tashu is in the Aftermath Empire's End. So,
you brought that book up a few times. You said that's like 2017, right?
It was published February 2017, which leads me to believe that probably was written sometime during the summer of 2016.
Which means that it's impossible that they knew for a fact that Palpatine was going to be in Episode 9 when they did that.
Or did they?
That's the problem, though, is that like Chris Terrio keeps shooting his mouth off, and he's like, "Oh, it was Kathleen Kennedy's idea. Nope, it was my idea." And he keeps like just putting out different theories. So I don't know if he's deliberately just creating a smokescreen. Again, we're never going to know. Like in 20, 30 years from now, we're going to get the greatest behind the scenes book of all time based on this era of Star Wars and just kind of the mess it was on a production level.
It's going to be great when JJ's like 70 and he goes on like future Charlie Rose and just starts popping off about like everything that happened to him during the making of this film. Like some of the, if there's like, I don't really think he's like a super intellectual great filmmaker, but if there's any truth to the rumors of the level of studio manipulation that was going on with him, just driving him up the wall, it's going to be amazing, and we'll definitely hear about it someday.
Maybe. But to answer your question, though, the person that was Vader's attendant in Rogue One's name was Vanay, and he's listed as an attendant, not any sort of advisor or
right.
Yeah, he's an attendant. Vanay. Good old Vanay. Where's that action figure, Hasbro? I'll buy it.
He hasn't achieved the rank of big purple hat and cloak yet.
You can be so lucky. But no, again, the whole thing, I know I kind of really regret it not doing that Aftermath Empire's End like episode. I know at one point I was priming Rus and Zenger to do it and I canceled it.
I know. I still didn't read it, so I mean.
No, I gave everybody the audio for that.
I need to. I actually wanted.
By the time you didn't look, it was an audio chapter he sent us.
Yeah, I did. I think I still have it on my computer, and I inserted it to one episode. It's okay. I might have to insert it again because it's profound. It's so profound. Like he actually says, I wish I had that. Do I have that book? I had that book somewhere, but I don't have it within like arm's reach. But like he actually says, like the Emperor will be reborn. He'll be back. He explicitly says it.
Teshu gambols down in front of the artifacts, his fingertips dancing along their cases. He mutters to himself, and Rax sees that he's chewed his own lips bloody. "Are you ready?" he asks Palpatine's old advisor. "I am," Teshu says, turning. His cheeks are wet with tears, his teeth slick with red. "Palpatine lives on. We will find him again out there in the dark. Everything has arranged itself as our master foretold. All things move toward the great design. The sacrifices have all been made."
That's great, but like, you know, they did like at the same time as that's all going on, they've had a rebooted Thrawn trilogy, right? And I mean, you did like it could have been totally within the realm of possibility of getting around to a series of novels that are just a retelling of Heir to the Empire. So like they could have brought back Palpatine anytime in any medium, you know. It was a safe thing to foreshadow.
But that's it's something that got completely overlooked. And Chris, you know all the major like professional fandom channels. None of them touched on this. Star Wars Theory, Star Wars Explained, the podcasting cartel. None of them touched on this.
Wait a minute, and they all had book reviews too. I wonder if there's a conspiracy. They're never actually reading anything. That's amazing.
No one reads a thing, including Stupendous Wave. He didn't read a dang thing.
I don't know though. I still think that book, and even that I know.
Is it getting too personal again?
Fine, whatever. At this point, I don't care. There's no Star Wars movies for 3 years. Let them intimidate anybody they want.
No. Because if I make him angry enough, he'll come on the show and I can yell at him in person.
But even
will the Emperor ever return, though? Do you guys think?
What?
I mean,
now?
Come on, they've defeated him 3 times. Whatever. Another time?
Come on, Russ. Third time's the charm.
Oh,
they can throw him down.
Never say never again.
But they
can prequel him up.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. They keep talking about that the new age of what are they calling it? The High Age. The what's making Star Wars
High Republic?
The High Republic.
Yeah, what is that? That sounds like a weed thing or something.
It's after the Old Republic, but before Episode 1.
400 years before Episode 1.
Oh, so they can have Yoda, of course. Why not?
Republic
God forbid.
was super, super, super chill back then.
They were really into reggae and those sweatshirts.
So this is probably like, I should probably know the answer to this, but like, do you have that classic line in A New Hope where Obi-Wan describes the age of the Republic as 1,000 generations? Like, so what are we looking at? like what is the, like, there's obviously no canon beginning of the Republic at this point, but like 1,000, what's 1,000 generations? Like, what does that even mean in Star Wars terms?
Jedis are really short-lived. It's just something we don't want to talk. Oh my gosh, no, it's factual. Look at Obi-Wan. Look at how quickly he aged. The Force takes a toll on you.
Well, he died at like 58, right?
Yeah, but he looked like 88.
Did you guys see recently that comparison of Space Bail Organa, Jimmy Smith's character from Rogue One next to Alec Guinness's picture, and like these guys aged over the same time period, and it's like Jimmy Smith looks amazing, and next to Alec Guinness, you're like, whoa, like that's a real hard. Disney, you should have aged up Jimmy Smith a little more.
Well, he's like a rich Alderaan guy, and Obi-Wan's been living in the desert, so that's pretty much how it plays out. Yeah, I give it a pass.
Hard pass on that one.
But yeah, anything? Okay, Chris. So more Rise of Skywalker stuff. We can always circle back to the High Republic in due time.
I got a Rise of Skywalker thing I wanted to mention.
Shoot, Zenger.
All right, so I found this uber interesting, and this is something I pointed out on the. Yeah, I'm going to do it on this one, Zach. Deal with it. On the ZengThis review of Rise of Skywalker, since apparently that entire episode should have just been called Plug, 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 Knights of Vader.
I loved it. I listened to the whole thing, Zenger. Yeah. Oh, I'm listening to it. I'm like, oh, I finally done it, folks. I have permeated ZengThis. I am the official Star Wars presence, even when I'm not there on ZengThis.
It was awful.
Yes, it was.
But me and oh my God, I was about to say me and Zack. God, you were really getting in my head.
Yes.
So me and Eric were discussing, and we mentioned that there was a video that came out that had the whole Rey Palpatine theory 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
About her fighting style in TFA. You're talking about that video?
Yes, I actually took the time to watch the video, and the guy makes some really good points the entire time. Misses the mark on a few of them, but there's some stuff that I'm like, were they really seeding this for a while? Like her being Palpatine's, like, related to Palpatine? Or, because I mean, Palpatine coming back, yeah, we can all admit that was probably something that was like a last minute, like, we need a villain. But her being a Palpatine.
We needed one more. We could have used 1/360 Rey spin, though, to really seal it.
With the scream.
That would have been too obvious.
Whose video was that?
It was done by Nerd Soup. I know there's a few others that have done one, but that's one I watched, and he talked about her fighting style, the way that she lunges forward with her lightsaber. There's only one other person that does it that exact way, but at the same time, she never was trained, so that might be some inherent skill to Palpatine.
It was all, if I remember right, based off the fight in The Force Awakens against Kylo Ren at the very end. Because this was pre-Last Jedi, this video, so it's actually nice to watch.
Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting one. They talk about the score with John Williams. Kind of has a few elements of Palpatine, and like Palpatine's theme and Rey's theme have a few elements in common. Like there's the guy does a really good job, and it's kind of eerie to see it now, like, in retrospect, like, since what we know, it's like, wow, were they really planning that at least? Like, we as we said, we all know that Palpatine being in this was a last minute thing, but was Rey being a Palpatine always the plan or not?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. It must be an obvious idea, because I heard there's another Star Wars podcast that I listen to. Sorry, guys. There's one other one. And it's the Star Wars Collectors Archive podcast, and they replayed a clip from a show they had two years ago where they went over a similar thing and talked about how the fighting style one thing, but the other thing the host honed in on was that her being Palpatine's descendant would make her a sort of perfect mirror image of Kylo Ren. And I guess that's story-wise a little bit more interesting than, like, I think the fighting style thing is just, I think that people are reading too much into that probably. but sort of what it does to sort of contribute to this notion of them being a dyad in the Force or whatever they're calling it. That I think
sure, why not? Let's go with it.
It's more interesting in that the words in the movie. You guys can help me out with what it was.
You have it right. It's dyad.
Yeah. So like it's more like when you think of it in terms of making them sort of an equal match for each other, it makes a lot of sense in that way.
I just thought of something else. Instead of saying, just go with it or don't think about it, there's one thing we should say as Star Wars fans instead now. Rus, if you may.
This is the way.
Thank you.
Is that what we're doing?
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for.
I'll back Chris up. I've listened to the same show, and yeah, that guy did call it. Skypain called it a couple years ago, and being the mirror image of Emperor and Kylo Ren, and in that whole Rey relationship. Yeah, good on him. He called it for real.
So it's about as old as that other video. Yeah, so I guess a few people were thinking it.
So what we need to do, Zach, is just have me just go on a crazy rant one day. So we have backlogs of
you gotta have claiming you got to claim every possible scenario for the Zenger. We got to get everything going.
Well, Zenger and I got the lightsaber right back like in November of 2018. Zenger and I were like did an entire episode about what Rey's lightsaber in episode 9 would be, and at the very end we're like, what if she just fixes the Luke one? And we're like, no, they wouldn't be that creatively bankrupt.
Dumb.
Yeah, we're like, there's no way they'd do that. And I'm not joking. The last 5 minutes of that episode, it's like, Zenger, no. I'm like picking up Zenger and throwing him down the energy shaft. This Palpatine, like, Zenger, what have you cursed me with? And then you watch the trailer and it's like, oh wait, that's what they literally did. They brought back the lightsaber.
Well, to be fair, if they were going to parrot the original trilogy exactly, she would have made a new green lightsaber instead.
They're not that clever. They're not that clever.
What, they're not that clever to watch a movie?
Exactly. It's easier to have her repair it.
But it's not exactly what happened in the original trilogy, to be fair.
Well, sure, but okay, two things I want to talk about real quick. One, I want to kind of put my own thoughts on just the Rey Palpatine thing and about like how far they were, like whether this was planned or not. I don't agree with the notion that the Palpatine thing, like him coming back, whether Rey's his granddaughter or not, I still think that's stupid. I get how it makes sense on a thematic level, and I appreciate it in that capacity. But I don't, on a personal level, I don't care for it. But I don't think Palpatine coming back was something beyond my weird affinity for Aftermath, Empire's End. I do think this was in the cards since the beginning, because everybody freaked out after them killing Lord Emperor Snoke. And it's like Ruin Johnson ruined Star Wars when they killed Lord Emperor Snoke. And it's like, folks, Rian Johnson had to go through the same like rounds of committees, like Chris said earlier, the rounds upon rounds of just signing off on different drafts. Why would you kill Snoke unless you had a reason? Unless there was something else behind the scenes. I still think that Snoke was always a surrogate of Palpatine in the sense of he was so derivative of Palpatine as a character. He's the giant, he's this omnipotent figure off in the distance in Force Awakens, very similar to how the Emperor is in Empire Strikes Back.
Look at how far away I am.
Well, it's true. That's essentially what it is. He's essentially he's only a hologram in Force Awakens, which what the Emperor is in Empire. And then you sit there
and then Phantom Menace as well.
Yeah. And then I think that was the plan all along. I don't think Snoke dying was this weird moment where Rian Johnson somehow like locked all the executives in a broom closet one day and said, "Okay, guys, we're shooting this quick. Get everybody on set." I don't think it was something like that.
They make it sound like a dare. A lot of people that is if Rian Johnson was like, "I'm going to kill Snoke, and that way Kylo Ren has to be the big bad guy. And that's what you guys have to do because I did it." It's like, no, that Emperor thing was there all along.
Yeah. Do you not think it was just like Rian Johnson's writing TFA and he's just like, guys, I'm going to do something totally bold. You ready for this? I'm going to kill Snoke.
Wait, what?
Wait. You don't think he just pitched it to them and they were like, that sounds
Zinger
bold.
Sits up in seat.
That sounds bold. We'll figure it out later. Let's do that.
Okay. There's also the like 800-pound gorilla in the room. Pitchman
Zinger.
That's way funnier than it should be.
It is for no apparent reason.
This whole time, Pitchman Zenger is just the 800-pound gorilla in the room, with a pair of like a really thick framed glasses.
No one will notice.
But no, is that like Rian Johnson was hired in March of 2016. JJ hadn't even finished. I'm sorry, Rian Johnson was hired in March of 2015.
That was like almost a decade ago.
It feels like it was almost a decade ago. But JJ was reshooting that film that summer. So Rian Johnson was trying to write a script on a film. Write a sequel that wasn't even locked in yet. So you really can't blame him. And considering that Last Jedi is really, out of all the Star Wars films, it's the only one that's so directly tied to its predecessor in such a unique way. Again, that's another Herculean task on the part of Rian Johnson. And then the true 800-pound gorilla in the room was that JJ never wanted to make this movie. It was Colin Madman Trevorrow who was hired. And the rumor is, the unofficial rumor, is that Colin Madman Trevorrow had a script. And the moment Carrie Fisher died...
As most madmen do.
The moment Carrie Fisher died, he didn't know what to do with his script. That was the joke, was that I'm sorry, not the joke. That was the narrative, was that when she passed away, Disney went back to him and said, because we all know the story now, Episode 7 was Han's film, Episode 8 was Luke's film, Episode 9 was Gibby Leia's film. And so when she died...
Episode 10 is Zori Bliss's film. We know it goes on.
It never ends. But I think that's what it was. And Colin Madman Trevorrow didn't know what to do. He refused to budge, and they fired him. And JJ got brought in because JJ is a shill. He's a stooge. He does what he's told. So if Kathleen Kennedy in September says we want to reshoot most of this film, or whether it be her or Bob Iger or Alan Horn, he goes, okay. They go jump. He goes, how high? And that's why they hire someone like him. Is because he's not going to push back. And the most resistance he's given to this entire process, that he's given a couple of really passive-aggressive interviews.
And by the way, J.J. Abrams, you are...
interviews.
Speaking of which, JJ, you should come on this show. You're welcome, as you can see.
Anytime.
It's a welcoming place for you, JJ.
I want to know what's in the box, though.
Well, you're never going to get him on if you demand that. Yeah, exactly. So on that subject of these passive aggressive interviews, though, like how much credence are we giving to the rumors of the studio influence on the post production process?
Oh, we're getting into this now.
Yes, I want to answer this. When it comes to the Reddit rumors, and I said it last week, I believe them almost, there's a bunch of bullet points, but I believe them almost entirely. It makes sense, and I really don't want to reiterate it because I said it a lot last week. But if you know anything about how this company works, being Disney, all the signs are there. They meddle. And the problem is that the meddling has got so much more pronounced because they want this to be Marvel so badly. They want this to be something where they literally can just churn out $1 billion film every 3 months. They don't care about the fact, and I think we said it earlier, they don't care if these movies are disposable. They want that thing. Like, nobody's going to remember Brie Larson's Captain Marvel in a couple of months. That movie came out less than a year ago and nobody remembers it.
Did?
Exactly. Like, it's like
my son got a goose toy, the cat from that movie, and he still asked me what it was, and we saw that movie in the theater.
I actually, funny enough...
Well, it's a cat, to be fair.
On that note, I was referring to Goose the other day because Ellie has a pop figure. I'm like, where's your Chewie pop figure? And she goes, I don't have a Chewie one. I'm like, the cat from that Marvel movie. And she's like, you mean? And I was like, yeah, his name in the comics is Chewie, though. And she's like, what? Very confused. But yeah, so there's your fun fact for the day, everyone.
But that's the point I'm trying to make, though. Like, even like, okay, if you look at the top grossing films of this year,
okay,
you have like I think it's both internationally and domestically. The highest grossing film is Avengers Endgame. I'm sorry, last year, is Avengers Endgame. And then after that, it's the Lion King remake. And look at that Lion King remake. That is
don't look at it.
Well, it's a
cause
concept.
Damage.
As a concept, look at it.
Oh, okay.
And it's nobody's favorite film. Nobody particularly likes it. Yeah, it made $1.5 billion. It's going to make more than I don't care how, our Star Wars fans amongst a lot of us, and to all of our devoted listeners out there, I don't care how much you don't like the Rise of Skywalker. I think we can all agree we would rather watch the Rise of Skywalker right now than the Lion King remake. And yet that movie will make easily $400 million more than the Rise of Skywalker. And when it comes to, and yes, the Rise of Skywalker was edited with a wood chipper, but at least it's not dead behind the eyes like the Lion King remake is. Mm-hmm. But like Chris was saying, look at Disney's history. Disney has a lot of films out there, and not all of them are winners. For every Lion King, like the 1994 film, there's a bunch of films that nobody remembers. I'm conceding that.
Black Cauldron.
Well, there's other weirder ones too that nobody remembers. More obscure films.
Are you just trying to bring up Song of the South again?
My God, I just watched The Black Hole on Disney Plus. That's something else, man.
Yeah, it is.
Ooh, yeah. I need to watch it if it's on Disney Plus.
It is. God. I watched it.
It's the only other thing on there that I want.
But the point being, though, is that they don't want to make. I don't think Disney's concerned with making memorable films anymore. I think if people like it, they're not going to complain. But it's the idea that it's called Let's Make a Buck. That's all this is. That's all they make now. He didn't take Toy Story 4. That film made $1.1 billion. And nobody cares.
So what is Disney's thing is copying stuff, though, and now they can't copy because they own it already. So they'll just have to copy themselves. That's where they're stuck.
So,
and not saying that the things they copied were bad, of doing fairy tales and trying to copy Star Wars or whatever they tried to do. A lot of times it really worked, but I think they're just out now.
But am I getting the sense that your opinion on the film has changed, Zach?
No. This is the part where I think I have to really explain to people. I'm insane. I think that goes without saying, but just for the sake of argument, I'm going to lay that out here. Remember, I'm the person that in the other podcast I do, I'm not sure if you ever heard of it. It's called Cinemoddities.
Never heard of it.
No, I think it's the first time it's ever been said on this podcast before.
Yes.
The first episode of that podcast is me talking about Batman v Superman and how essentially it's a quasi love letter to the tragedy of 9/11. And I'm utterly fascinated by it. And the fact that you make a superhero movie with two of the most popular characters, and all it is 9/11 imagery. And I'm like, why am I fascinated by this? Why is this movie oh God, spellbound me the way it does? No, I love The Rise of Skywalker. I still do. But I also love movies that are just incoherent messes on a $200 million level. I think those are infinitely more valuable. Like, I love Four Stick. I love the fact that it's like $100 million Fantastic Four movie that's just it barely holds together. It's like this weird sort of like David Cronenberg-esque thing that's just sitting there screaming to be put out of its own misery.
But isn't that something that's interesting as a concept and studying the production rather than interesting as watching a film?
I think you can't divorce the two. I think if you just, it's kind of like it's a difference between something like Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, where you have this concept of what could it have been? What is Richard?
Don't you think something like for a contemporary example? Don't you think something like Cats is a good example of that? Where the stories of the production are fascinating, but I'm never going to see it.
Okay, for the record, I said it last week. I gotta say it now. I did see Cats. I did a double feature on New Year's Day of Cats and The Rise of Skywalker.
I kind of want to, just to as an exploration and sort of masochism, but I can't do it.
Did you cosplay like you said you were going to? And I won't say for which movie. Just say yes or no.
What's the old saying go? Blink once for yes, twice for no.
All right, meow once.
No, I'm blinking twice. Yes. I'm
a loath cat, guys. Meow. Okay. Nerd.
Okay, can I tell a really quick, little personal story about my double feature of Cats and The Rise of Skywalker on New Year's Day?
This is what I've been waiting for.
Okay, this is pretty good. So, first, I think Zenger knows this. I have a ton of Regal Rewards points because I do things with buying movie tickets, even though I don't go to movies. It ties in partly to the movie voucher story that maybe one day I'll finally tell on this podcast, but that won't be today. So I had a bunch of points for when the Rise of Skywalker came out. They had a bunch of things on Regal's website, like they had like a hoodie, a T-shirt, like a notebook. But one of the items was like a 4x6 foot poster for the Rise of Skywalker. If you're in the Knights of Vader Facebook group, I posted it and I was asking Chris about it. And I'm like, hey, how much do you think this like poster like is worth? And I think it eventually sold for like $700 or close to it. And I did some more research on it, Chris. And actually those Rise of Skywalker IMAX posters actually go for like $500 a piece. So
That's criminal.
It's not too absurd to believe that one went for $700, like in the hype of like the movie came out within like a week. But the point being was that like when all this stuff went online, I could have gotten that poster for like $28. And I said, nah, what am I ever going to do with it? It's just going to sit in my closet. So I went and got the hoodie instead. And then like every time I look at the hoodie now, I'm like, wow, you could have been $700, but I have a Star Wars hoodie now that says The Rise of Skywalker on it. But the point being for my New Year's Day double feature, I did back to back. I had the first showing was for Cats at 10:50 in the morning, and then the Rise of Skywalker was at 12:45. So I go to the usher and I hand him my phone for my showing the Cats, and he sees my Rise of Skywalker hoodie. He's like, "Buddy, you're going to the wrong movie." He's like, "Don't you realize the early showing of Star Wars until 12:30?" He actually said that to me.
Well, he doesn't expect it to be a large overlapping audience because you weren't like over the age of 50 and of a specific gender.
I don't care. Chris, that movie Cats is not for anybody. There's nobody on the face of this earth that movie is for.
I know a set batch of people that might enjoy it, but still very slim margin.
My review of Cats is, and I think I said it last
Nightmare
week,
Fuel.
It's not the sad thing is that like it's the worst kind of movie. It's boring and scary to look at. Like I'm sitting there, and at one point I started to lose my mind. I started shutting my eyes. I'm like, oh, the music's nice. Then you open your eyes and you're like, crap. And all the characters are so scary to look at. Like we have like Idris Elba cat. Like the Taylor Swift cat is genuinely horrifying. Like Taylor Swift looks like an alien to begin with, and making her into a cat alien is just somehow even worse.
Wait. Vader this week.
Which viewing of Rise of Skywalker was this on the same day as?
The fourth viewing.
Okay, so at least wasn't the same day that you'd already watched Rise of Skywalker twice.
This isn't part of Zack's Rise of Skywalker trilogy.
All
it's
right,
like,
okay.
It's like
Just
Skywalker,
sure.
Rise of Skywalker is my trilogy.
All right.
Yeah, Cats. I advise nobody to ever watch Cats ever. Like, as somebody who hosts a podcast called Cinemoddities, I can wholeheartedly tell you do not ever need to watch that film. Trust me.
Duly noted.
I was about to just out of morbid curiosity, but I'll refrain.
There's not enough morbid curiosity for that.
It's boring. That's the problem about Cats. There's not enough to it. It's just kind of it's them like I literally all this is a bunch of people dressed as cats dancing for 2 hours. Like, and at the very end, like Judi Dench is like staring into the camera, breaking the fourth wall, like telling you how to treat your cat. It's like, what is this? It's like, get out of here, movie.
I've heard so many people talk about that scene. It must be remarkable.
It's not even interesting. It's
the
boring.
1977 version was better. We had B. Arthur dancing around with them, playing that role. Carrie Fisher would have been in it somehow.
That would have been fun. We have Idris Elba cat that he looks more like a bat than he does anything else. Like, it's like, no, I don't want to. Like, they're all wearing like overcoats. I'm like, why is the cat wearing an overcoat? There's Ian McKellen cat. He just looks like Ian McKellen. Like, and someone just dumped a bunch. It's like someone dumped a bunch of like glue on him. He rolled around like on a barbershop floor. There's a cat wearing a hat, and the entire time I kept referring to him as the Cat in the Hat character.
So it wasn't, but all in all, it wasn't enough of an entertaining disaster that you would recommend it on the basis of the ridiculousness of the production. No, not at all. That's the problem. I went into it because Rob and I were talking about it because Rob was supposed to come to New York and we were going to go see it together. And so I went to go see it figuring, okay, I was going to see that or Uncut Gems, but the timing for Uncut Gems didn't work out. So I'm like, okay, I'll see Cats. And I went into it like, again, I've seen movies that are weird and I sit in the theater and just laugh at it the entire time. I should be pointing out that like in my theater at 10:50, like it was like 6 people and the 2 people like in like the furthest back like row seats were laughing the entire time. And
it wasn't a sing-along viewing that I've seen been going around lately. You can go to a sing-along viewing.
Terrifying.
Unfortunately. Maybe in a couple of weeks.
This is going to be this generation's Rocky Horror. I just want you to see that.
It's not that interesting. That's the problem. It's not that interesting. I guess at one point there's a cat that like he's like the railroad cat, and he starts like tap dancing on like railroad ties. And I'm not joking. That's a thing that happens.
Is it Rum Tum Tugger or whatever?
Maybe. And the whole thing is like he's like a tap dancing cat. He has tap shoes, and they shoot him from the waist up, so you can't even see him tap dancing. I'm like, what is going on?
See, you just said they
Gregory
shoot him, and I
Hines
just
is-
assumed they shot him, like literally.
I think it's because they didn't have enough rendering time for the wide shot. If you hear about the schedule they were under on the post production side, it's amazing that it's even viewable.
Yeah, apparently there's a scene where like they like re-edited it or something where like you can see Judi Dench's hand, human hand.
Yeah.
Oh,
If only I were paying that close of attention.
That's like the weird Jar Jar
Well,
rubber hand scenes that are very
but, like,
off-putting.
There was that this is kind of slightly takes it back towards Star Wars, but like there was that story about how they were sent out updated versions of the film while it was already in theaters.
Yeah.
So you're losing money horribly. I don't know what the cost is. Maybe to these days, if it's digital, it's not extreme cost-wise to send out new versions of it.
I know what they do. They sent it out through the internet. People have to realize, like nowadays, like most films, like if you like have digital projection, they don't even send hard drives anymore. They just digitally download the film from a server. Like that's what it is now. Like all these, like it's the theater chains. I'm not talking about like independent ones, but like your Regals, your AMCs, your biggies. They just download it from a server. Like there's no cost anymore. That's just what it is. It's just a matter of just like the electricity of just running like a computer.
Right.
We
The
need
cost
some
would just be
cyberpunk like hacker theaters, then we can go cheap and see these things.
that's how they leak, I suppose. But it's just interesting that like I can't remember the last time I heard of something that was updated like during the first couple weeks it was in theaters.
They make the actors go on in front of the screen and do the scene correctly.
It's amazing. It's amazing you didn't hear about something like that with like Rogue One or something, considering it's that easy for them to do. But
yeah, I know. I can't think of the last time something of this caliber was like they had to show an alternate cut. There's always things like that. I've heard like months later they've done. Like I know like with the King's Speech like 10 years ago, they like released a version that was like PG-13 where they edited out all the swearing. There's stuff like that, but no, I've never heard of them, like a week into a film's release, like releasing an alternate cut.
maybe it's a regional thing, kind of like how like the Saudi Arabia version of Rise of Skywalker doesn't have that lesbian kiss at the end.
I'm pretty sure. You know what, folks? I'm on the record. I'm not laughing. See, if we're going to cancel anybody, you cancel everybody who laughed.
To be fair, they got 10 extra frames of Wedge, I've heard, too. So.
Oh, my God. Worth it.
Worth it.
Oh, but he's kissing a dude.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Worth
so
it.
right back to where we started. He's kissing Greg Grunberg.
Oh.
He's
Worth
saving him
it.
from crap. He's saving him from Wedge's single, like jumps out of the Millennium Falcon and catches Greg Grunberg as his X-wing explodes.
Am I alone? Am I alone in feeling that like seeing Wedge that briefly was almost worse than not seeing him at all? Like,
No.
what was that?
It's so like you had
He's
to
a
know
busy
you were
guy.
looking
He's
for
got-
an old man. The kids knew, they were like,
Yeah,
there has to be somebody right.
And you know it's an editing thing. Like they had him there. They obviously shot a bunch. They made him, zoom all directions in that Falcon chair and say a bunch of stuff and talk to people. And they did
Just
use
give
it.
us. We need one of those deadpan Wedge lines, like "I'm in a spaceship, I am shooting." So we
Well, it's
love
the guy-
Wedge's just
no, I
witty
mean,
talk.
This is the guy who like actually destroyed the second Death Star. Forget what happened on the first one where he kind of like he didn't quite get that involved, but this is a legitimate important character, and it's almost like having him say hello, and then
It
never
is.
referencing him again. I don't
He's
know.
not even on the Force planet at the end.
Well, the best part about this, which is like, and like I know perhaps the most popular Star Wars podcast, Rebel Force Radio, tends to come up a lot in the group.
Wait.
But they had a whole episode where they talked about a guest they had on was in direct communication with Dennis Lawson's agent, and they were telling him, the reason they asked me to be in 7, the reason I didn't want to do it is because they didn't give me anything to do. I was just sitting in a cockpit or whatever in the script, and I didn't want it. and there was all this play up to saying this guy they had on was like, I made the connection. I got Dennis Lawson's crew in touch with Lucasfilm to be in episode 9, and they finally gave him something important to do, and that's the only reason he's agreed to be in the film.
Yeah, he was going to solve a mystery or something.
He finally discovers who Sifo DS is.
Like, that's a thing that happened, and then you have what he is in the film. It's amazing.
One fan is really happy.
The thing about that, though, I can think of is that, like, Dennis Lawson must have gotten some money, too, because he is on the cover of, like, Resistance Reborn, so that must have been another paycheck for him. I don't know. Maybe they're going to give him some other role in something else, or maybe it's another instance of editing.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that even the people involved in the production of the film had a very different expectations for what the final cut would look like. Like, you have the interview with John Williams' brother, he made some comments where he was talking about, like, basically if you read into what he's saying, he was talking to a music school about how the recording was going for the soundtrack, and he said something that he made some reference that indicated that this was by far the longest Star Wars movie ever.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and then of course you have you got another quote from Daisy Ridley where she goes out of her way to say that Palpatine's return is explained. And
by it not being explained. Perfect.
Yeah. Like, there's an interview with her where she's like, "Oh yeah, it's explained, and it's explained like real clearly. It's not left open."
On
like
Disney
she
Plus
basically says that. It's amazing. So obviously she saw, like, she didn't really know what was going on. They recorded a bunch of different stuff, right?
No. They explained it. The dark side of the Force is the means to many on things on that.
And
I explained it clearly.
And I kind of took offense when the Hobbit when he was explaining how Palpatine might be back, the Hobbit sort of implied that cloning was, like, he sort of tied cloning into a sort of dark side perspective, which I didn't really care for, because, like, some of those clones were good dudes, man. Like, he sort of put a shadow on the.
We have entire series that get into why they are such good dudes.
A couple of them were good dudes, right? So, like, and that's canon. So, like, he sort of made cloning sound a little more dirty than he should have, I think, in the Hobbit in that one scene.
And he said, "My precious," and we all cheered, even though he's not one that said that. I'm just making it as a joke.
Gotcha.
I like that Chris keeps referring to this one specific character as the Hobbit. Even
can't remember his name.
If you're confused as to who
It
Chris
literally
is talking
took
about,
it literally took me till the most recent time he's mentioned it.
Me too. The first time
he's talking about Lost. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't name the actor, just parts he's been in.
Yeah. Okay. I don't feel as bad now, but to bounce off your point. Yes. Deus Ex Sith. Well, was it Deus Ex Sith Machina? Who knows everything. He's the expert on Sith people. Just out of nowhere in the film.
But I'm not evil.
Not Leia's boat.
But the thing you mentioned, though, about the music, Chris, and this is something that I haven't heard anybody bring up. And to be fair, I don't read and listen to everything out there, so maybe somebody already did. But if you listen, I think we all know when it comes to Star Wars soundtracks, the final track, which is the one that's played over the credits, is usually like a compilation or an amalgamation of, like, all the different themes throughout the film, right?
It's a medley, sure.
A medley. We all agree on that, right?
Sure. Why not?
Oh, great. If you listen to the finale track of The Rise of Skywalker, about 3 minutes in, it starts playing the Imperial March. And if you look at the film,
why is that significant, Zach?
I don't know. It's not in the film.
Well, neither is the re-recorded version of Duel of the Fates, which was definitely done.
I remember. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up as well, because I remember with a lot of the Making Star Wars leaks back, like in, I think, April or May, when Rey and Kylo Ren were fighting or having their however it was described at the time, force duels. When they were fighting, it was supposed to switch the background from, like, all different sorts of Star Wars locales. They were supposed to be fighting on Mustafar.
I have a theory on that.
Then, like,
Naboo. I think people mixed up that hyper jumping with that. That was my theory.
It's possible, but I don't know. It's because I
like that theory.
But I mean, it seems kind of obvious to me where, like, they kind of did have a fight that was that was like they had a lightsaber duel that was kind of in two places at the same time, and like I'm like considering that's actually in the movie, I have to assume that that's what people were talking about. Like they have that like the Force Skype duel.
Sure. Yeah.
That's kind of exactly what
so
that
much sense
is. Yeah.
But like how those rumors were described, though, is that like we were supposed to get this massive duel between the two of them, and it was supposed to, again, it was supposed to be like, I remember because Jason Ward even said it was supposed to be very video game-esque in that it would change, like it would be all these important locales over Star Wars. And that's where you would have your Duel of the Fates, your Battle of the Heroes, your Bespin confrontation. You were going to have all these different moments, and it was supposed to connect it all because this was the Force finally coming to peace. It's like everything was kind of coalescing for the final time. And that's why, even though as a creative decision, I don't like it, but it makes sense as a concept. And the fact that, and like you said, John Williams' brother goes, oh, we're getting every theme in there. We're getting everything. And yes, that might be a little bit of hyperbole on his part, because we do get a bunch of themes in this film. There's clearly the Imperial March is in the final track. So at one point in the film, there was supposed to be a sequence of that being played. We didn't get that. And they obviously didn't feel it was that much of a concern to even change that. It's even if you watch the movie, if you sit in the movie theater right now and you listen to the credits, it's there. At 3 minutes into the credits, you hear bum ba lump ba lump bum 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 ba lump ba lump bum bum, and it comes out of nowhere. You're like, wow, when this part of the movie happened? I like this. Can we go back to that part? And it's like, no, this doesn't exist in this version of the film.
Well, something that really stood out to me during the my second viewing of the movie was a good chunk of the duel on the shipwrecked sort of Death Star chunk has no music at all. And I don't know if that was one of those decisions where like one of those pieces was supposed to be in there, but they decided they liked it better with nothing. But a good portion of that has no music underneath it when they're fighting out on that piece of the Death Star in the water.
Yeah,
it makes it less memorable. Now that I'm thinking back to it and go, yeah, that happened, but I can't like associate music with it.
There's another indicator too. That sequence seems a little out of place because you look at the Rise of Skywalker final poster, and it's even on the teaser poster. We have the shot of Rey and Kylo Ren fighting on the piece of the Death Star wreckage, and it's him wearing the mask. And it's like, oh, but he doesn't. I understand it's not fair to extrapolate plot points from a poster, a piece of marketing, but it's like, why is he wearing the mask in the marketing if that's not what's in the final product? And then you even look at the final poster for the Rise of Skywalker, the one that kind of has the generic one with all the floating heads. On that poster, it's very like Spider-Man Sony-esque in that we have Kylo Ren in the red glued helmet on there twice. And it's like you have him in the upper right-hand corner and you have him in the lower right-hand corner with the red helmet. And it's like, well, why do we have him with the exact same helmet? Why not have him with the helmet in the upper right and then have him in the bottom right without the helmet? Because that's what actually transpires in the film. That wouldn't be hard to do.
That whole series of posters is quite frankly embarrassing. Like you got the Hot Toys Emperor and you got the double Kylo. Like it's just like Photoshop interns. Like it's amazing they don't just reach out and find a real artist to do something that will make you feel anything.
But Chris, that might, by using real artists, that might actually have some sort of integrity that might disrupt, that might just like upset somebody in the mass audiences. Remember,
do you think I just like, is that really true? Like, is that real? Like, okay. There's really the mass audiences wouldn't like that poster that I'm seeing fan art after fan art of that's vastly superior in every way to what's being cranked out.
I'm going to answer as somebody who has their degree in marketing and knows how this works. This is what they do. It's none of these decisions made by, because I know there's a lot of emotions are running high when it comes to Star Wars. Shocking, right? But no. all of these decisions that Disney makes, they're not doing it out of spite to anybody. Everything boils down to the market research. So when Chris says like there's fan art out there for the Rise of Skywalker that's infinitely better than the floating head poster that we got for the final poster with the white border. And the reason why they don't pick an actual artist to do this sort of stuff is that there's a reason why every Marvel film it's always floating heads. There's a reason why the Frozen poster is floating heads. Is because on a market research level, when they show this stuff to focus groups, this is the sort of stuff that clicks. It's just, and plus an element of it too nobody realizes is that when you have the talent, the actors, and you have a poster like the Rise of Skywalker one, you have Daisy Ridley on there, you have Kelly Marie Tran, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, you have all these actors, and when you have the actors on there, they and their agents have to sign off on it. So let's say you do have a really cool, let's say you have a really cool looking Drew Struzan-esque poster, like something really that has some imagination to it. And there's a possibility that like you have a poster that everybody signed off on and the focus group sign off on it. Yet let's say Daisy Ridley's people say, we don't like how she looks in this. They legally can't put that out without having her people sign off on it. Man, and that's what happens too.
It was so much better back in the day when George Lucas could trick a bunch of unknown actors to sign away every right they ever had to their likeness, and they never had another thing to say about it from that point on. It was really
the good old days of film.
Amazing. That's I didn't know that agents. I would have assumed that Disney, being the monolith that they are, would somehow have a contract that would stop individual agents from meddling in posters. But maybe I think part of it too. It's not even like contracts and signing your life away. I think there's also things with the Screen Actors Guild. You don't. It's like that thing. Like I've heard stories from people that are like are in like featured in movie and not featured. They get hired to be in a film, kind of like a bit role, not a cameo, but kind of just like a low level role, and their scene gets. Yeah, exactly. And their scene gets edited out, yet every single time the movie shows up on TV, like every month, like because of rentals, they get a check in the mail. Right.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's only like some like minuscule amount, they get money from it. And I think that's part of this. I think the Screen Actors Guild has rights for the actors, and that's what it is. Is that like if you are going to use an actor's likeness in the marketing, they have to approve of it. And that's why you do get such a bland marketing now. And again, I think it's like anything else. Everybody's to blame.
I hate to.
You're saying there's like a great like episode 9 poster out there, but Jeff Garland didn't look like how Claude looked in it, and there's you got to scrap it. Claude, he's not happy.
I want on the record, Russ, that in the credits I looked up who voiced Claude, and it's not Jeff Garland.
Oh, well, who the heck was he?
I saw a picture of Jeff Garland, and he was totally edited out. Yeah,
my next guess was the guy who got his head cut off.
But the funny thing about that is, so like, what did Ian McDermott's agents have to say about Hot Toys Emperor then?
Boy, Ronald, every time you say that, like I was like, Hot Toy Emperor.
I guess they approved because he looked great.
Yeah, and but look at it too, though, is that like when they use Kylo Ren with the helmet on, they don't need Adam Driver's approval. Mm-hmm. That's another reason too. It's not just simply also that if you don't, it's kind of like with like when it comes to certain posters, like sometimes the actors want their likeness featured, like Robert Downey Jr., like on all the Avenger stuff.
At least 3 times on the poster.
Exactly. But sometimes other actors don't care or just like, okay, whatever. I would imagine there's a reason why, like in like Guardians of the Galaxy's merchandise, you're much more inclined to see Star-Lord with his helmet than you are to see the Chris Pratt like head, because it's easier and it's more quote unquote cost effective to use that version in the marketing because you don't need to then go through the actor's people. Again, that's just my extrapolation of things I've read and heard. Again, I'm not an insider by any stretch of the imagination, but all this makes sense to me when you connect it.
You mentioned way earlier now, that you don't think Disney's personally attacking anyone with Star Wars. They are by not giving me my detours.
Chris, what's your opinion on Star Wars detours?
Obviously anything that much like Star Wars Underworld, anything that got the axe the minute. Like, I was really shook when Star Wars sold to Disney. Like, it really bothered me. I was like, oh my God, it's all over. It's never going to be good again. I'm never going to honestly enjoy it. How true
it was.
I made a meme of like, I edited a clip of like Hank Hill seeing it on the news and having a horrified reaction. Like I put that out on Twitter. It was great. but
dang it, Bobby.
So anything that they just said, nope, this is not on Image anymore. All of that stuff I want like pumped straight into my veins to make me feel like it's like 2011 again, and Star Wars is still amazing. But
Perfect.
But so like, I mean, obviously, like, look at the concept art for that 1313 game. Like, my God, we were so close. You know, it looked amazing.
On the verge of greatness, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, and you know, I gotta admit, it didn't play out. It only played out 75% as bad as I thought it would.
What's the 25% that played out?
There.
What's the 25% that did play out the way it was supposed to?
I guess I'll have to say that's like Rebels and Rogue One. I guess. And I don't like Rogue One because like I know there's a lot of like old dudes who like Rogue One just because like that's the original trilogy film, man. Like I like my original
my gold
trilogy.
leader.
That's
gold leader.
That's old school. That's got stormtroopers and stuff like that. No, I like it because it's the only one that made me it gave me the most sort of emotional connection to the characters beyond any of the other films in the sequel trilogy. There's a couple parts in there where I actually cared about the characters and I felt mildly invested. There's like one moment in Rise of Skywalker that I kind of got that, but aside from that, Rogue One's the only one where I felt honestly invested. And like I was less than 0% invested in Solo. Like I couldn't even believe what I was watching. I was like, they finally did it. They finally made it the most mundane. They finally made Fast and the Furious Star Wars.
My God, that is what it is.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know. Like it's innocuous, but that's also the problem. You know, it's like not offensive, but it's not interesting at all. But Rogue One, I would say Rogue One and Solo are definitely Rogue One and Rebels are definitely that 25% where they kind of still, and I think that's almost just because it was still so soon after the purchase that a lot of the same people were still involved in like doing their old jobs. Like John Knoll is the mastermind of Rogue One, and like the guy's a genius. Like he invented Photoshop, and like he was special effects supervisor on all the prequels. So it's good to hear that somebody like that still had any power at the time in 2016, and he wasn't totally shoveled out like Ben Burtt and all those other guys.
Does John Knoll still work for Lucasfilm?
Well, I've seen behind the scenes of him working on Mandalorian, so I assume so.
Oh yeah, I remember that now.
Well, back to Resistance. No, sorry.
I do want to point out real quick. I think Chris, you and I have talked about in the Facebook group that the Disney ride, Rise of the Resistance. I love how
they should have called it Rides of the Resistance. Oh, so close.
God, your puns, man. Oh man, too good. Can't take it.
Somebody stop this man.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, let him go.
I love that I love how Rise of Skywalker essentially breaks the continuity of Rise of the Resistance, the ride.
I haven't watched it at all. I don't care if you spoil it now, but like I haven't seen any of it.
Oh, it's not that. I'm not
Kylo Ren's haunted house. He does. He pops out a lot.
And then the vehicle just backs up away from him, and it's suddenly somehow totally fine. Oh,
lightsabers are coming at you.
Oh my God! It's okay. Someone who's good with Photoshop in the Knights of Vader Facebook group, make a fake promo poster for Kylo Ren's haunted house now at Walt Disney World.
When you pull it at the end, you look on the screen and the person next to you is Kylo Ren. You're lucky.
Imagine if it was just like, you know how they resurface rides and like rename them. Like imagine if it just was the Haunted Mansion, but they just put a bunch of Star Wars stuff on it.
Don't give them ideas. They did that with Space Mountain for a while.
But Haunted Mansion like Lilo and Stitch or something.
Grim grinning emperors come to socialize. Yes, Order 66 is coming now. All right, so just go with that.
There's a Baby Yoda in there somewhere with a Santa cap. Okay, so this is quite okay. You okay? You okay, Zenger?
Yeah, I'm okay. That
wasn't even me.
I'll give you a report. My mother-in-law went to the Disney parks last week, and she brought home the first Baby Yoda merch I've ever seen. A $40 shirt. a $40 T-shirt that says "The Child" and it has 3 pictures of Baby Yoda on it. It's $40.
They really needed to write "The Child" on it. They're like, "Shut up, fans! Stop calling it Baby Yoda."
It says "The Child."
That's funny. But yeah, I love that the Rise of the Resistance ride is essentially broken by the Rise of Skywalker. Never mind, it's really weird to have 2 major like Star Wars-y things both have the Rise of the in the title. Like that's kind of weird. Like you have Rise of the Resistance, Rise of Skywalker.
It's almost
rising.
like
it's like this thing's supposed to be over. We're ending everything. We're killing it all, but it's rising. It's like it doesn't make sense.
they clearly named the ride before they agreed upon before the committee agreed upon the title of the film. That's all you're dealing with there.
You call yours Ride of Skywalker. No, you call yours Ride of Resistance.
The
no,
press release is
we're
already
taking
out. We can't
Rise.
change it.
Fine, we both take Rise.
They'll figure out why we changed it. We just have to have it for both now.
If the movie was called The Ride of Skywalker, would you think a little different?
That movie would be perfect still.
It is a thrill ride. Like I would, in all honesty, which is more feels like a thrill ride, the actual like ride at Disney World or the film. Like both films are going a mile a minute.
No, I want to watch Rise of Skywalker in a Star Wars battle pod at like a Dave and Buster's. Like that probably is like.
All right, so okay. I gotta derail you guys. I can't resist myself. So did you like I honestly hate being that guy who's like pointing out things that logistically just yanked me out of the film. But like the light speed skipping thing, did that bother anyone like a tenth as much as it bothered me?
I don't know. Why did we waste the time on something that didn't become relevant at any other point in the movie?
But it's so like, and we just have 2 movies earlier. Han Solo pulls off, which is like, it was kind of, I take it with a grain of salt, obviously, but he light speeds into the atmosphere of a planet. And it's like, that's a new thing. He was cautious. He was a little bit worried about it. You know, he could have easily killed them all. But then you have Poe light speeding in between, like he pulls out a light speed and he's in between buildings.
Yeah, it's I don't, and putting it right there up front in the beginning, and it having no meaning later. Yeah,
like he's light speeding into
that's
the
like big
atmosphere
Star
of several
Wars
planets. Like
you could Star Wars tech move.
But you could just go into a few different systems. But he's inside the atmosphere, like right at the ground. But like, am I crazy that this is like one of the dumbest things ever in any of these movies? Like.
Could have like thrown a newspaper at him and he caught it and stuff. Like go through people's like he's like a Ferris Bueller's kind of thing.
But like yeah, like because could you do anything more reckless ever? Like
I don't know, land the Falcon by skidding it into the ground instead of using the blatantly obvious landing gear it has, just setting it down straight.
He says they're broken. That's why they do that.
And also
you could in Solo, they just take the Falcon, hover it, and then drop it down directly.
They also crash it 3 times in Solo as well. So, like, what are you gonna do? But you know, I can believe.
How does that TIE fighter go to light speed?
That is a genuine plot hole, Zenger. I will give you credit for that.
Finally, I get credit.
But
the man gets acknowledgement.
But to answer the light speed. We'll get to that in a moment. To answer your first question, the light speed skipping, that didn't bother me. And it does tie into the plot because it's meant to set up the whole thing about Poe's like seedy life before joining the Resistance.
That was too little too late in this movie. If you wanted to pull that, you could have brought it up in 9 when they're going to a casino. You're gonna be like, all right, look, I know some dirty people. He was still Mr. Clean up till the very end. They just tried to make him too Han Solo.
Ross, that is a great point. Why did he not go to Canto Bight?
Because he was too busy leading a mutiny against Admiral Purplehair.
Exactly.
Come on, this is Spice Runner Poe, man.
He was going to get some dinosaurs.
I haven't been keeping up with the comics, but I heard that like sort of giving him that Spice Runner backstory like kind of conflicts with the comics. Like it was sort of like there might have been a brief window in there where he could have done that.
Maybe, well, I think, but said he made like a life.
Yeah, they said as a kid he grew up learning to do inspirational speeches for the Resistance and like flying real good, and that was all he got before that.
It just sounds like something JJ like made up, and he's like, and it's like the story group's just like deal with it because I don't know anything about the expanded universe canon material. So he's now a criminal.
Wait,
he wrote Spice, guys. he's got spice, and he's cooler than Han Solo. He's actually different.
Wait, so you're telling me I have to read a ton of comics, you bunch of nerds? Hell no, I'm just going to do my own thing.
No, you just watch video summaries of the comics, Zenger.
That's even more stressful. I'm going to go back to my mystery box.
No, but again, the thing about Poe being a spice runner, that doesn't bother me. I know, yes, in the continuity, there's a gap in there because
it didn't bother me either. But it's just it seemed sort of like something that they didn't think about until this movie.
It's like finding out Han Solo's a scoundrel when you're on Endor. I'm like, oh, this guy, he was kind of a loose cannon this whole time. I had no idea. Oh.
No, really, McClunky.
And I want spice redefined also, because like back when that was first brought up, it seemed like a little more threatening. This time when I heard it, I was like, it doesn't sound so bad. What are they actually talking about?
As I put oregano on something, like, exactly. I'm a spice runner now.
It sounded less threatening than it ever had to me. I don't know why.
Well, because I think it's one of those things where it's like the first time it's ever been truly brought to the surface with Star Wars. Usually, like, that's not really brought up. That's usually more of an ancillary media thing.
Well,
like,
C-3PO does say it in A New Hope.
Yeah, I know,
but
you know
that Kessel is like almost like a fun house at this point. I'm so scared. Spice lines of Kessel. It's like droids weekend at Bernie's over there.
That's adjacent to the coaxium mines, which have nothing to do with the spice mines.
Oh, wait a second. So if it's a weekend at so if it's like a funhouse thing, is that where the Rise of Skywalker ride is? Or sorry, what is it? What is it? Kylo's?
I've lost complete control, folks.
You got to rein it in. I'm sorry.
It's like Revenge of the Nerds. A guy dresses like Darth Vader and does terrible things to a woman in the movie.
Those are terrible movies if you think about it.
I'm trying to think. There was a second point Chris brought up that I wanted to circle back to, or maybe it was Zenger. I kind of lost track.
Oh no, there was a point I wanted to bring up way earlier that I forgot about. Oh, I get to do it now?
Go, Zenger.
Okay, I was waiting for Zach's permission to derail even further. So when we were talking about the Mustafar thing, so those guys like worship Vader.
Yeah.
So can I get the deleted scene of him going? So you guys worship my grandfather? He was pretty cool.
But you think they would have just let him in?
To die.
No, but I think the thing that's interesting about that sequence that again I don't know what it looks like. It hasn't leaked. The extended sequence, if it even exists, is that it was supposed to be like a character arc for Kylo Ren. Like he goes from being this Vader acolyte in the first film to being someone he's essentially murdering the quote unquote ghost of his past, in the sense of there's all these acolytes that are essentially what he was a year earlier, and he's mowing through them. He's literally killing the past. And there's small things like that we're going to very implicitly tie it into The Last Jedi that they cut out. And that's what kind of makes me so disappointed. I think there is a lot of depth in this film. There's a lot of things to look at. But at the same time, though, it's also a J.J. Abrams film. I don't think the man is capable of making a deep film. That's just not his style, especially on a film that he doesn't really want to be making. And that's the weird catch-22. Are there
in a film that they're not actually letting him make either, if you believe the leaks and stuff.
Yeah, so I do think there's a lot of things in this film that we're never going to, again, that we're not going to get in a official release way, like in the sense of like being added to the film. All this talk, a lot of people are talking about how there's never been in a director's cut of a Star Wars film before. It's like we have more cuts of Star Wars than we know what to do with at this point. Every Star Wars film has an alternate cut except for Revenge of the Sith. It's baffling. It's like, I don't know why. I think that's I wouldn't be surprised that Disney eventually does this somewhere down the line, because selling director's cuts, or I'm using that more as a synonym for the alternate cut. But yeah, God, can you imagine how many Blu-rays and digital copies you would sell of every Star Wars movie under the moniker of the director's cut? Can you imagine? Think of all that, because we do know that there's coming out at the end of March, there's going to be the 27-disc 4K collection called the Skywalker Saga. And I would imagine we're going to see a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff on that's not going to be included with the general release of The Rise of Skywalker.
I know the pre-sale has gone out for that. Have they actually announced that there's new content?
It's, they know.
It's implied, okay.
It's pretty expensive to imply that.
I know on the digital bits.
Yo, two dudes do some stuff.
I know on the Digital Bits website they're recommending people hold off on pre-ordering until there's like an official announcement as to what it entails. We're not going to get that announcement until Rise of Skywalker is out of theaters, so we're probably not going to hear about that until at the earliest, I'd say the beginning of February. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Probably most likely the end of February would be my guess.
Yeah, we're too close to get the real truth from JJ, man. Even if there's a commentary, like it's all suspect until we're years down the road.
Well, there is going to be
It's going to be a podcast. You know it. He's going to like go completely Rogue One, start working for DC. He's going to end up on somebody's podcast and be like,
no, he's going to make his own podcast for you. Call it The Box.
I don't think JJ's going to do that because he is friends with Kathleen Kennedy on a personal level. I don't think he wants. I think at the end of the day, we're going to, again, I've said it numerous times, we're going to learn a lot about this era of Star Wars like 20 years from now. I don't think she's to blame here. I think she's caught in the crossfire, and her power has been severely diminished probably since the Rogue One thing. And that's why a lot of these films are like a mess. Like, think about it. Like, everybody keeps like chiming in that like, Disney is the perfect brand steward of Star Wars. And it's like, George Lucas never let one film outright bomb, then the very next film be a disappointment. That never happened under Lucas's term. I don't care how much you like or dislike the prequels. Even the 2008 Clone Wars movie, that thing made money. It didn't make an insane amount of money, but it made money. And yet everybody's looking at Disney just because we have Baby Yoda. I don't think The Mandalorian is the wild success that we're being led to believe it is. I think it's popular within very specific sects of the internet, but I don't think it's this ubiquitous thing that people. I don't think The Mandalorian is on the same level that Stranger Things is on. I don't know if Stranger Things is still that popular as it was a couple of years ago.
I don't know about you guys, but I can say anecdotally, a bunch of normies at my work who have never watched any Star Wars thing ever have seen The Mandalorian.
But that's not the issue, though. It's not an issue of watching something. It's the idea of it, whether it captures the cultural zeitgeist. Stranger Things was one of those things that it showed up everywhere all at once. And it stayed. I remember when that Stranger Things season 2 trailer premiered with all the kids wearing the Ghostbusters uniform. That's all I saw for like 2 months straight.
Yeah.
That
kid's in Ghostbusters now. The kid is in Ghostbusters now. Oh.
But that's the thing I'm trying to say with The Mandalorian.
The cycle's complete.
That's what I'm trying to say, though, with The Mandalorian, is that I don't think we're at that point. I don't think The Mandalorian is this thing. And I know I mentioned it last week. I think every time you hear one of these stupid articles being like, the man, like, what's it, The Witcher? The Witcher had 875,000 Mylar ratings, but The Mandalorian only had 150 Mylars. And it's like, we don't have access to any of this data. It doesn't mean anything. This is all private information.
Wait. Do they have interns?
The point
Netflix?
Sure. The point
they're just forcing them to sit there and watch these shows so they can get that rating.
But that's not the thing, though. It's the fact that like Netflix never discloses viewership numbers. And even if they do, we have nothing to corroborate it with. The same goes for Disney Plus. Disney's not releasing any viewership numbers. The only thing that we have a quasi idea of, and I still kind of question the validity of this, is that it got the streaming service had over 10 million new subscribers the first day of launch, which is, again, a fraction of what Netflix does. So I get it. Disney Plus just started. I'm not calling it a success or failure, but it's the idea that like Mandalorian is not, as everybody prophesizing that is the future. It's not. Like at this point, Star Wars is kind of like a rudderless ocean liner. It's kind of going in like every single direction, and they don't know what to do with it still. Like, it's weird that like Disney's had control of this now for 7 years, and Star Wars is more up in the air now than it's ever been maybe in the history of its existence.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of like glad they got through this finish line of Rise of Skywalker. And yeah, as someone like you guys who follows all this stuff really close, yeah, what besides the TV shows, there's completely rudderless right now. I mean, as far as we know, we've heard about Rian Johnson trilogies and in Game of Thrones trilogies and all that, and then all that seems to be just in the freaking garbage chute, Flyboy.
But the thing about that, though, is that nothing, like, when it comes to the movies, there's nothing even in pre-production right now. Like,
that we know of.
No, okay. We do know, because if something's in pre-production, they would have announced it. Like, pre-production is a definitive stage in a film's making. I'm not talking about them just writing, like doing concept art. Yes, they're probably doing concept art all the time. They're probably, blue skying different ideas all the time. But the fact that, like, nothing is in official development, in the sense of, like, okay,
Ralph McClory stuff can I just rip off and say that it's new?
Well, it did sound like they had gotten a little farther with Obi-Wan before the Solo reaction. Like, I believe there were some quotes from some guys who were doing set design who said they were building stuff for Mos Eisley and then they got shut down. So, like, they didn't really announce Obi-Wan at that point either, right? So, like,
but couldn't that be interpreted as the Episode 5 Mandalorian thing? Couldn't that just be somebody crossing their wires?
But,
man.
But like, when did that get shut down, though? That was never a rocky boat, as far as we've heard, right?
But we don't know if that was okay. But this is the thing about crossing wires. Zenger and I had this conversation like months ago that during the lead up to Solo, there was rumors going around that the Emperor was going to make an appearance in Solo, and Zenger and I were like,
Vader was going to make an appearance in Solo.
No, it was the Emperor too. It was the Emperor too.
Yeah.
Well, it's public knowledge that Darth Maul could have been one of like 5 different people, right? Yeah.
No, because she never refers to him by name. There's nothing naming who she's talking to.
There's an interview where Ron Howard's like, I have no idea who it's gonna be.
And his son told him. It was like his son's idea or something. Somebody told him, Darth Maul's this character that's in Star Wars.
He's pretty cool. Put him in. It's like, okay. Thanks.
But the thing, though, is that, like, when Zenger and I were talking about Palpatine and Solo, we're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And then when Palpatine was announced for The Rise of Skywalker in April, we're like, oh, it makes sense now. Somebody heard that Palpatine was going to be in a Star Wars movie, and it was at the same time that Episode 9 was in development, and they got their wires crossed. And I think that's why I think what happened. I think Lucasfilm is doing 100. I think part of the problem is that they're doing nothing, and they're doing a million things at the same time. Well, I think there's so many small things that it's easy to be like, oh, this is happening here, but it's really happening there instead.
Or they shot a alternate ending of Solo where it's Palpatine, and it was no more work than it was for Lucas to replace that scene in The Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean? They just fired him up and do a hologram session. They might have done a Vader one and a Palpatine one, and then like played them all back to back. Yeah.
It's possible, but I think that's the thing at the end of the day, is that there's so many wires being crossed, and you need that corroborating like factor that some of this stuff has. Again, to go back to the Reddit rumors about the production of The Rise of Skywalker, I do think there's a lot of merit to that. Again, I don't know. I'm just using my own my wisdom and just stuff that I've acquired as secondhand knowledge of how Disney works, and I'm trying to connect the pieces the best that I can. But that's the weird thing, though, with this company, is that they have a nasty habit. And I think Rob and I talked about it, and Russ can attest to this, in the 3-hour-long Disneyland Fun episode. The last half an hour, like, we talk about just Disney as a company. And this is the one thing I kind of feel like I'm ringing the bell when it comes for Star Wars fans, and nobody will listen to me, is that, like, Disney has a horrible habit that if a property is not making money for them, they abandon it. Like, we were joking about the black hole, but look at Tron. I imagine Chris can tell you there is a diehard legion of Tron fans out there, and Disney doesn't care about them. Like, the moment a property stops making money, they drop it. So it's like, think about it. Solo bombed. Rise of Skywalker is a disappointment. There's only so many times they're going to try this. And yes, I'm not saying they're going to drop Star Wars entirely. There'll always be people out there who are going to buy Star Wars stuff because it has the logo on it. But there's a very real possibility that we don't get any more Star Wars films. I honestly think, considering this company is so reactive in nature, they just say, you know what, the hell with it. Let's just keep everything on the streaming service. You can control the narrative better that way, and you don't have to share any data. They can spin let's say only 3 people watch The Mandalorian. We're never going to know that because they can spin the narrative however they like in a way that they can't do with a film in theaters.
That would be weird if it was just the three of us, and not even Chris. That had seen the Mandalorian.
Canada's
That's the UK. That doesn't have it. But I've just been watching YouTube summaries of the episodes, and I've tricked you guys that I know what's going on. But
we posted those. We're the only three who've seen it.
Right.
But I have to ask though, so why? This is the thing I have to ask Chris, because Chris is a listener and he also has his finger on the pulse of the Star Wars fan base. When I make these comments, Chris, am I a crazy person for saying all this, or do you see any sort of? Does this make sense to you, or am I just again? I'm a madman.
You're gonna have to come a tad more specific than that. We've covered a lot of ground here. Like what?
No, but
like what do you what?
Fair. But I mean, like I make the comment about like I know a couple months ago with Rob and Zenger, I made the comment about there being like an organized conspiracy against Star Wars, and Rob and Zenger kind of laughed at me. Some people in the Facebook group are like, "Okay, you might be on to something."
One of the listeners talked to me and said that was pretty far out there, and I was like, "Yeah."
Well, you got a PM complaint about the.
Oh no! It wasn't a PM. It was a direct. Like I had a conversation with the person.
Oh,
fascinating. But okay, so I make these comments on here, and they kind of go nowhere because Zenger and Rus.
So this one went somewhere.
But the point being, though, is like when I make comments about like Disney abandoning Star Wars, is that just ramblings to you, or do you see something like that happening? If these things continue to underperform,
when like if we're gonna give any credence to the leaks about the production details that we're seeing right now, when if you're gonna concede that, like if the studio is gonna mess with J.J. Abrams as much as we're hearing, and it could be all false, but let's assume down the road it comes out that he was devastated during the post-production process. He was so unhappy with the final cut. He had his cut. Then they kind of compromised on a worse version that he didn't like, and then he went away for a couple days and they re-edited it again. If we're anywhere close to that's how it played out, then a conspiracy to sort of derail it slightly to put it on ice for a few years would not surprise me.
Thank you.
Did you just want like vindication?
Yes. I
okay.
I want everybody to know that I have these things I say on this podcast, and it's like I'll talk for 45 minutes straight, and then like the episode comes out, and someone posts in the Facebook group, they're like, "I laughed when Zenger made joke," and I'm like, "Great!" I'm like, "This thing I've been thinking about for an entire week, nobody cares about."
No, but
like,
This is the way. He's trying to eat me.
Well, it might. I don't know. It might be that I'm the only one who's listening to those theories, and that's somehow related to how I ended up on this episode. And everybody else is just laughing at what Zenger says. It's totally possible. But if we really believe that like somebody like JJ is getting micromanaged to that degree, they're not just trusting in him, saying like, you know, you did a good job the first time, it made a lot of money. We're just going to trust you on this one. If they're not willing to throw him a bone, like which they did for Rian Johnson by the sound of it, then anything's possible. Like absolutely anything's possible. Like we don't know what these maniacs are going to do.
You know, it's funny. Me and Eric on our record of ZengThis today, we're actually talking about that because I was joking around about New Mutants coming out finally. And we kind of got on a discussion topic of like the micromanaging of directors, that a director can put out a movie, like make a movie, have their final cut, but then they get micromanaged, and it's like, is it still their movie in the end then? If it gets chopped up and sliced apart by somebody at a studio that's like, oh, well, this stuff didn't test well, so we need to take it out, or this isn't the way we wanted it, so. But then is that truly still a director's movie? Because no offense, if I sit there, let's say I edit a ZengThis episode, or Zack edits a Knights of Vader episode, to not sit there and have this be the revenge of Zenger for the Rise of Skywalker review on ZengThis, but let's say Zack edits this and he puts it up on this goes up on Podbean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it goes up on Podbean. Sometime in between him editing it and it going up on Podbean, someone else goes in and puts a ton of ads in there, chops out a few things he says, just butchers it up, but still makes it enough to where it can still make a profit and do something. Like, how would, like, is it still Zack's thing then?
No.
Yeah, it's not. Thank you.
Check, but I mean, and this is why, and I mean, and you've perfectly distilled the reason why episodes 1 through 6 are good and these are not, and it's quite simple, really. You have George Lucas, 31 years old during the production of A New Hope, $10 million budget, $10 million budget. He thought of it. He directed it. No one involved in The Rise of Skywalker has a tenth of that within them. They just don't, especially JJ. What original property has he ever come up with that demonstrated the slightest understanding of myths, of archetypes, of a story structure that gives you anything that, what was his directorial debut, Mission Impossible 3? That's not even, there's been better Mission Impossible 4 or 5 might be better than that. Wrap your head around that for a moment. That Mission Impossible might have gotten better since number 3.
No,
but
that's
anyway,
impossible.
I confirm Super 8 is right where it was when it came out.
Okay, but Super 8 is super derivative as well, right? Like it's
super derivative 8.
Yeah. So like, I mean, you can't, and you even take that. If I don't know how much you guys know about how The Empire Strikes Back was funded, but like George Lucas positioned himself to have creative control on that movie and to keep the studio away, and you can't even. You can't get anywhere near that kind of control, and no one involved in this project has anywhere near that kind of vision and passion about the project. It's a job. It's about how they come away looking at the end of this. That's why JJ is not speaking his mind right now, aside from contracts that disable him from speaking his mind right now.
but he was pretty okay. There's a lot to unpack there. But with JJ, he was within 24 hours of the film being released.
It was a mea culpa if you don't like it, but he didn't really talk about anything.
Oh yes, he made that comment in the first 24 hours. He's like, somebody asked him, and I know that video's been around a lot in the last few weeks, where it's like, so what do you think about all the criticism? And he's like, they're right. And that's what he said. He was, and I think a lot of people took that as him, like you said, trying to sit there, play both sides, try to make everybody happy.
The only thing that won't enrage like 50%. That's all he could say.
I think that JJ wouldn't be making that comment with any other film he's released so far. I just get the feeling, because JJ's been doing a bunch of interviews, and even prior to this, this Reddit rumor story, he's been uncharacteristically candid. Because I know I played it during our the main Rise of Skywalker review, where somebody was interviewing him and asking him about the unaltered original trilogy, and he made a comment that was shocking. He goes, I asked him about that, and the answer I got was very unsatisfying. And he says something, I know I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, the answer they gave me makes no sense as to why they won't do that.
And you don't think that his ongoing current experience with the post-production process had somehow made him a little salty, and he just felt like saying something like that?
But that's what I mean, though. I think that you're proving my point. That's what I mean. I think if JJ was happy with this film in any capacity, he wouldn't be making those comments. I think he is bitter. I think he is maybe not bitter. I think he is frustrated. I think he only did this once again as a favor to Kathleen Kennedy, and they probably said, okay, we'll give you a longer leash to play on. And then back during the rumor is during the summer, they took the film away from him. And that's when they start. And apparently the reshoots just started at the end of September. That's the rumor. It was 2 months of reshoots, days before the film was supposed to. I'm sorry, weeks before the film was supposed to come out. That's the unofficial story. Again, all this is we got to sprinkle in some allegedlys, some conjecture, some speculation, but
a few accusatory statements.
And sure. Did you guys also remember hearing a lot of stuff about how? You're going to have to help me out with who was saying it, but I remember hearing quotes from people involved in the production that the ending is just going to blow your mind. And
Kevin
I think
Smith.
I think Don Williams said it as well. I think he's made some comment about the ending just being insane. So like
Kevin Smith wasn't allowed to go in the room to see what was happening because it would have blown his mind. So what even was that? What was that?
Showed him the mystery
I'm guessing.
box.
We didn't get to see.
I'm guessing that was a set, and I'm pretty confident that would have been the Lars Homestead set because they obviously didn't go to Tunisia to film it, so they rebuilt it somewhere. So I'm guessing that's what they didn't. He didn't want Kevin Smith to go look at because he was talking about a physical set, and they weren't actively shooting on it. But I'm pretty sure Don Williams is just in that same interview we were talking about earlier says something about how the ending is just like it's going to melt your brains, and like it tells you that that's not the ending we saw.
Yeah,
my brain didn't melt too much. I mean, I like the film, but it didn't melt my brain. I'll say that.
But that
mine was pretty okay too.
Yeah,
but that ending makes on a thematic and narrative level. That ending makes no sense. And I think there's also an indicator because there is.
You're talking about the rumored ending or the one that's in the movie?
Oh no, when we got in the no, nobody knows what this. If there is an if this alleged alternate ending exists, nobody knows what it is. I haven't read any rumors on it.
So my assumption was the inclusion of actually seeing all those Force ghosts
when she was standing there at the homestead.
Yeah, like I heard. I don't know I don't know how valid all these rumors are, but I caught one that was saying they were all filmed, and the dialogue you heard was parts of that.
Yeah,
and
that Anakin was filmed, and
they literally somehow physically stopped Palpatine from killing her or something like that, and that might have melted my brain depending how it played out. I don't know.
But that part I have that scene. Okay, I know I'm the one who likes to have conspiracies on here, but even that scene again, I would believe they would bring all these actors in, just film them just for the sake of having it on. They could always use it later. It's one of those things where you have it in the can.
I believe it just because you have those Jedi who you'd never know who they were by their voice. Mm-hmm. Like
interesting,
because like you don't know what any of those Jedi sound like. So how else? Like, but they're visually iconic. You'd recognize them in an instant from the prequels and Clone Wars and all that.
Well, okay. There's two things.
That is a good point.
Yes, that is a very good point. That was one of the comments Chris made in the Facebook group, and that's why I wanted to talk to him about that. I agree with you. I do think that certain characters, like we talked about, like Adi Gallia, Ayla Secura, Luminara Unduli, on paper, in just their voices, like I don't care how diehard of a Star Wars fan you are, no Star Wars fan can pick out Ayla Secura from just hearing her without seeing who she. Like the moment you see her, you know who she is, but just a voice, you have no idea. I don't think she had a single speaking line in any of the films.
In the Clone Wars, she did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know she's in the Clone Wars, but in the films, no. But the thing I have to say about that, and this is kind of my devil's advocate argument to what you just said, is that the reason why they chose Ayla Secura, Luminara Unduli, Adi Gallia is because if you take them out and think, okay, I want you all, if you're J.J. Abrams or if you're the director of Episode 9 and you want to have a sequence where all the dead Jedi talk to Rey, which Jedi, and please be serious, please no Force Ghost Wampa's arm. I know, cross him off the list. If you're going to name actual Jedi characters that people are going to recognize, who do you pick? Not random, but people that they'll actually recognize based on just from watching the series.
It's all of them except those three that you just named.
Probably.
Yes.
Mace Windu.
Yoda tops the list. Mace Windu, Windu, Yoda, Obi-Wan.
Pause. And what do all those have in common?
They've been in the films.
I understand.
Wait. Whoa.
What? You got it. I was saying this before too. Obviously, even if you just look at it from an aesthetic point of view, it's nice here.
That's not where I'm going with this, though.
What?
You got it right.
Put yourself. No, nobody's gotten it right yet.
Oh.
And this is another reason why also Ben Solo dies. It's the same reason. If you had just Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Anakin, those are all men. There's no women there. And if you don't have any women encouraging Rey, you're going to be misogynistic. And remember, the Force is female. And that's why they put Ayla Secura. And again, I have no problem with this. I'm pointing out an observation. I'm not saying it's true or false. Just
it's
some
got
food for
more on
thought.
Lucas on not making many more
But-
identifiable of
that's
female Force
pre-Disney.
users that we cared about. Too
But
much.
it doesn't matter though, because it's the same reason why Ben Solo had to. I think it's one of the reasons why Ben Solo had to die was that, remember, a bunch of people subscribe to a very specific viewpoint or ideology on feminism, and that's the feminism of some women don't need men. And I think Rey was always crafted. Again, this is my own perspective. I'm not trying to project. This is my own observation. Ever since Kathleen Kennedy wore that Force is Female t-shirt, and she can do whatever she wants. I'm not saying she's wrong or right for wearing it. Heck, at this point, if I saw one of those, I'd buy it in a New York Minute.
Hey, go to heruniverse.com. Let's plug in all this. Let's just say her universe. There we go.
Oh, is it? Okay, if it's
I guarantee. I'm sure it is.
You know, you put it on the wall right beside the MAGA hat, right? It's. Anyways,
I think that's how you cause a fire.
Make Alderaan gone again? Why?
No, but the point. Let me finish my thought though about the Rey thing, and it's just I think the idea is that if you don't have any female Force ghost, I think they would see that as problematic, and I think that goes to the reason why Rey is alone at the end. It's the notion of Rey is a strong, powerful woman, and she doesn't need a man to make her complete. She's complete without him. And I think that's a very specific reason why he dies. Yes, they do have the kiss at the end, but I think there's a reason to say that Rey is going to grow because of his absence. Remember, there was a big thing going into this. Daisy Ridley gave an interview back, I think, during Celebration 2019, that Lucasfilm was very concerned about the if they did have Reylo, the toxicity that would promote. The fact that having an abusive male lover, that was a thing that Daisy Ridley said. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that was a thing that she mentioned in an interview. And remember, this is the weird stuff that people think of in Hollywood. These are things that concern them. Explaining how Kylo Ren is able to fly a TIE fighter that doesn't have hyperdrive is not their concern. The politically correct aspect of it is something that concerns them. And I'm not saying they're wrong or right. They can do whatever they want. It's their film. They can do as much as it or as little as they deem so. But I do think that's the reason why you got those Jedi. I think Chris's theory makes a lot of sense. I would love to believe that there's actual footage of that somewhere. And I think he makes a fantastic argument. But I think the reason why you got such obscure Jedi in that sequence is because they needed to have female Jedi. And just having Ahsoka, I think a lot of people would have seen that as token feminism. The same way a lot of people are seeing that they edited out the lesbian kiss at the end in certain territories around the world as virtue signaling in America. Remember, there's a lot of weird narratives around in Hollywood nowadays, and they're trying. I think that's the reason why this film, another casualty or another bullet in this film, is it tried to please everybody. For even though JJ says, "Oh, how can you please everybody?" This film tried to please everybody, and like anything in life, when you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one.
So is that why he embodies himself as an abused droid who is just taking orders and is scared of human interaction at this point because he is embodied as Dio in this film?
You know, like that could be. It also could be that they checked it out and like it just seemed like it was an inevitable comment when they played that first cut where it was just dudes, male Force ghosts talking to Rey. And it was just an inevitable comment that it just like audibly sounded unbalanced. It's a question a lot of people are going to bring up. So we need to just deal with it before people start asking about it.
Yeah, they had a keg and were high-fiving too. It was really it's very toxic.
Yeah, it was like, yeah. And then,
they catcalled her.
Oh God, Russ.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Knights of Vader does not condone the cat calling, the Force Ghost cat calling of young Jedi.
But you know, it was something like that. It was something like that because it kind of breaks the canon, right? Because like we see Adi Gallia. We see Ayla Secura get horribly shot in the back, and then her corpse continue to get shot after she's already dead by these clones. And then, you know, about maybe 45 minutes later, we hear Yoda first start telling Obi-Wan that you can survive death, but you have to do it this specific exact way before you die.
All these Wookiees
Yeah, so it kind of breaks their sort of because with Clone Wars they have really gone pretty deep with the sort of mythology of how the Jedi survive death. So
whoa, wait. So you're saying that I have to sit there?
It's the last 4 episodes.
No. So you're saying I have to sit there, battle somebody to some amazing music, have my Padawan watch me behind some beam wall thing, get knocked in my freaking face with a lightsaber hilt, and then get stabbed directly in the gut by some guy that looks like the living Satan? And that's how I can become a Force ghost?
Well, I thought it had... I guess, it's...
Because remember... Obi-Wan was told that his master Qui-Gon was able to do this, so...
Kind of. To do it right, you have to disappear. Qui-Gon, he can only talk, because he didn't disappear at the end. He didn't poof into nothing.
No, they did. Okay. I hate being a Star Wars fan.
They burned him. That's
No,
kind of disappearing.
what happened was, again, Chris, you mentioned it, in the Lost Missions, he talks to Yoda. It's like a bunch of, like, sparkly, glowy lights.
Yeah.
And then in the Stupid from a Certain Point of View book that I hate
we're back to this.
Yeah, he's in that book. Obi-Wan talks to Qui-Gon when Luke goes off to the Lars homestead, and Qui-Gon manifests himself like a Force ghost, because since then, Qui-Gon has learned how to become a sparkly, glowy Force ghost.
But you can't take that. You can't look at that book as actual canon.
It is canon. It is canon.
It's canon that
likes.
individual perspective is like it's have you never met someone who is completely delusional about the existence? That's what's canon about that. You're getting a window into the madness of someone.
You mean of someone who doesn't accept episode 2 as canon and just crazily screams about it?
Exactly.
Zack, you should be well versed in something like that.
But that book is not okay. I know the differentiation Chris is trying to make here is that I know there's the book
called
the
title of the book.
I know it's a cute title, but it's not meant to be one of those titles that's supposed to be. It's not a book that's meant to be like you decide.
It's like Star Wars What If, correct? And if Marvel's going to do a show like that, they're going to do a Star Wars show like that, where it's
you're telling me that Boba Fett scene is canon? That Boba Fett story is canon?
It's supposed to be. It is. Like, okay, let me go back to the differentiation. Is that the only example? I know there's certain things in Star Wars that are in the canon that are supposed to be taken with a giant like grain of salt.
Yeah.
But there's the 2 examples I can think of, and the one that I've only read is there's the book The Legends of Luke Skywalker. And that book is meant to be ambiguous because there's like 5 or 6 short stories about Luke Skywalker. And the thing about it is that they're all told they're told in canon in the sense of like it's somebody telling a tale. The first story is somebody like actually giving their own version of the events of A New Hope. And it's really goofy. It's about like all these things that happened. At the end of it's about some guy like in a bar telling the story while he's drunk. And at the end of the story, it's Luke Skywalker's there and he walks out of the bar and someone goes, wait, if that guy was making it all up, why didn't you correct him? And Luke's like, well, sometimes it's someone's perception's more important than the actual like factual nature of the story. And that's the first story. That's the first story. And that frames the whole book.
And that's an incredibly large theme in this entire, like, especially The Last Jedi. That's a huge theme of that movie. Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. I know what you're getting at though, but I'm talking more less of a lens of like Star Wars mythology and more as like a bunch of nerds having like a knowledge pissing contest.
Right.
That's how I'm looking. Again,
not what this show is.
Sometimes it's a lot of things.
Okay.
There's a lot of something going on. Someone's getting pissed on, and that's what it feels like half the time. But that's the thing, though, is that like Star Wars is this weird thing where you either look at it as just space fantasy nonsense. You go in just, you know what, I want some space fantasy for 2 hours. Did I get that? Yes or no? And the answer is yes. Every Star Wars film gives you space fantasy for 2 hours. If that's your only metric to grade any of these movies on, they all do a phenomenal job at it. Yet there's also the angle, like we've mentioned, is that like how canon breaking a lot of what Disney's doing as of late. Like I said, the Rise of the Resistance ride is canon breaking. This film does a bunch of things that kind of bend the canon almost to the point of snapping. But at the end of the day, it's Disney, and they can write themselves out of any corner they so choose. All they have to do is give Pablo Hidalgo a little bit of a leeway to tell someone in a comic book, have Ayla Secura show up. And that's all you got to do. It's literally one line of dialogue in a book, comic, TV show. Think about it, in Mandalorian season 2, Baby Yoda's going to teach Force Ghost Adi Gallia how to commune with Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. Like that's the problem with connecting dots in Star Wars nowadays as a fan, is that it's such a vast universe. There's always ways for us to just connect these things, that we do a lot of the heavy lifting for the creatives because we are so much more ingrained in this than they'll ever be.
Yeah,
am I wrong?
We're connecting the dots for them, and they get to put the picture together later. It feels like.
Yes, exactly, and that's what. Go ahead.
And why? And I don't know. I'm just speaking for myself here, but like before the Disney purchase, it never felt that way to me. I don't know. Is that just is that an age thing? I don't know.
It felt it was a lot more rigid, and we knew the framework we were working in. Even when they went back and did Lucasfilm stuff like Knights of the Old Republic and all, at least it was all original and it wasn't, it's its own thing. Disney needs to, if they're going to keep it going, they got to do something new.
But I think what it comes down to, I think it's the conversation that Chris and I had when he visited me in New York. George Lucas is a madman. He can do whatever. It's his creation, like you said earlier, Chris. He can do whatever he wants with it. He created it. And yes, you can then have an argument about auteurism, I think about it. How much of Star Wars is George Lucas? How much of it is Chris McQuarrie? How much of it is Dennis Muir? I'm sorry. I can't believe I did it. It's late. It's almost midnight. Forgive me.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
It's with a K, too.
I heard him pronounce it with a C.
But no, the point being is that, like, how much of it is Ralph McQuarrie? How much of it is Dennis Murin? How much of it is Phil Tippett? How much of it is just all these things? You can make an argument about auteurism from all this, but ultimately it's his name on the credits. Star Wars was going to live or die, George Lucas's career was going to live or die by the success of Star Wars, and we all know how that turned out. But because it was his creation, he built it more or less from the ground up. But when Disney buys it, it inherently adds a layer of, what's the right word to say this?
Wax.
Sanitation.
No. Well, you're not wrong, but I don't think it's the exact word I'm looking for. Kind of like a layer of, oh my God, something
insanity?
Sure. It almost invalid, like a layer of just, it's invalid.
Yeah, because I like hollow.
Yeah, it's a layer of hollow because it's not theirs. They bought it. It's kind of like what happened to Star Trek once Gene Roddenberry died. It's the idea that, like, okay, it's no longer, and it's the analogy that Chris presented. I don't think you said it was yours. You saw it. You heard it on one of the other podcasts, that the original trilogy is the Old Testament, the prequels are the New Testament, and the sequel trilogy is the Book of Mormon.
Well, I would
say the Left Behind series.
I would switch the OT and the PT in that analogy in terms of messaging, but yeah,
I don't think it's okay. Sure, I can't argue on that though. But the idea of like when they were created, one is clearly derivative of the other in that scenario. But I think that's what it is. I think the moment you have a soulless, multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation come in, whose sole intent is to suck the daylights out of it,
Joseph Smith.
JJ Smith.
Yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think that's what it comes down to, is that no matter what Disney creates, there's always going to be that layer of, just like Russ said, hollowness to it. And we have to, as fans, either accept this or not. If you can't accept it, then you have your original trilogy, and it's never going anywhere. Go find your 4K restorations of the unaltered original trilogy. Sit in your living room and just watch those ad nauseum. They're never going away. But if you do want, it's like what Force Ghost Jim always says, if you do want anything new, just be happy that it's not dead. Thank God it's not a Tron. That's just not sitting there just rotting somewhere. And that's where I think my love for The Rise of Skywalker comes from. Objectively speaking, I think the film is a mess. I think it has a lot of problems. But as a Star Wars fan that's been in this now for over 20 years, I got everything I wanted out of this film. I think the more and more I look at Star Wars, I especially more the Disney era, I think every film kind of gave me what I needed at the specific time. Not to make this into a Matrix thing, but it's kind of like what was it, the Trinity in the Oracle. Star Wars gave me exactly what I needed in that exact moment. In 2015, I don't think I was ready for the Star Wars that I needed. I think I needed to kind of see Star Wars in a new perspective, that it wasn't this thing that was going to be always perfect. I needed that film to make me realize, oh, wait, I have to be objective with Star Wars. And then 2016, when my faith in Star Wars was at its absolute lowest, I got Rogue One that made me say, wow, Star Wars can be great again. Star Wars can do new things. It doesn't have to be tied to pre-existing lore. And I know that's a really strange thing to say about Rogue One. And then Last Jedi completely changed the way I ever looked at Star Wars. It made me appreciate Star Wars on a level as a film scholar, which at that point I didn't know was possible. Solo, like Chris said, it's a joyride. It's not meant to be anything more than that.
I ate popcorn during the film.
Exactly. Yeah. Nailed it.
In The Rise of Skywalker, I think The Rise of Skywalker has the right level of schmuck. Yeah.
It is getting too late for Zack.
Yeah, I know. I'm tired. I'm getting bleary-eyed. But I think The Rise of Skywalker gave me it had that right layer of schmaltz. I think as much as everybody talks about J.J. Abrams and schmaltz, it's the first time his entire career I ate up what he was giving me, even if it wasn't what he wanted. And plus, I am a psycho. I love these weirdo films where the studio meddles. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Give me a Batman v Superman over a Civil War any day. I'd rather have the admirable failure than the safe double.
Tomorrowland.
Have George Clooney fall in love with a little robot girl any day of the week.
Well,
yeah, and fight Dr. House.
That I can appreciate that perspective. I did obviously go to see it, and I derived some enjoyment out of it. But so to keep us, I guess we're getting pushing 2.5 hours. So I just want to say something good about this movie. That the one moment that really spoke to me incredibly powerfully was when Ben gets to talk to his father for a few minutes, and I can't separate myself. I can't view these movies as if I'm just there experiencing the narrative anymore. I don't know when it happened, but it's impossible anymore. I can't help but think about the production, the details, who it is, why they're there, what they're doing.
Why is Harrison Ford so
grumpy
today?
And that in a lot of ways that was Harrison Ford, not Han Solo to me. And you know, and he when he said when Ben was talking about how Leia's dead, he can't go home, there's no one there anymore, and it was that one brief moment where Harrison Ford looks at him and just says, "I know." It's almost like an acknowledgement of how unbelievably messed up this whole situation is. And he's talking to me as a viewer. He's talking to 2011 Chris, who freaked out that Disney bought this thing. He's talking to alternate universe Jason Solo, who was supposed to be sort of a good dude. He's talking to he's addressing everything that's wrong with the current moment. And he's looking at me and he says, "This is unbelievably messed up, but at least we're here together at this last moment." And I like, it got me. I was into it. I believe in it. Harrison Ford looked like he wasn't. I didn't think he was hating his life being there. I think those two actors had an exchange that was worthwhile, and it on a meta level, which I think this movie is really winking at the audience all the time in inappropriate ways that they should be. And I don't think that was intended, but that's what I got from that moment. And I absolutely love that part of the movie. I'm not sure I feel the same way about any other part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree. There's a lot. I think that's what it's weird. This movie's kind of like the antithesis to The Last Jedi in the sense that there's a lot going on for maybe all the wrong reasons. In the sense of there's a lot of just there's layers in this film, but I'm not sure if it's the kind of layers that we want to be like. It's kind of more like seedy underbelly than just like kind of like layers in a cake where it's like, oh wow, you just keep drilling down and keep finding more and more things to appreciate. This is like, oh, I didn't know this was here. It's kind of like you find like the skeletons. I'm like, oh, so that's where my pet gerbil that ran away during camp ended up.
Yeah. If I knew that in 2011 or whenever it was, that 2012 when the announcement came out, if I knew that in roughly 2020 a 79-year-old Harrison Ford would be telling me that it's okay, I might have felt a little better about it.
I'm pretty sure that's the poll quote on the DVD box in a couple of months.
Harrison Ford gives it a tacit 45-degree thumbs up.
As his plane is crashing on a golf course.
That's how Harrison Ford
landing you can walk away from.
That's how Harrison Ford ended up on the Death Star. He was flying his plane. He crashed into the Death Star.
He crashed his coffin.
Oh damn! I ended up here.
Did you guys realize that there's? Did you guys realize there's two people in this movie who previously in a previous film had fell down a Death Star shaft and they're now back?
Those things don't kill you, apparently.
Well, come on. Think about in Star Wars, in all honesty, whether it be Darth Maul, Han Solo, Emperor Palpatine, like if you get thrown down a never-ending chasm, there's a very real possibility.
You have a 100% chance of life.
It happened to Ben in this movie.
Phasma back? She fell down an impossible thing. She should have been.
Russ, I gotta say something for episode 10.
Yeah, it's true. JJ, of all the things, that sounds like the thing he was the most upset about. He's like, but why did he kill Phasma? Like, that was my thing. Too bad.
Wait, not only did you kill her, but you gave her most interesting character development to the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
And she shot all those stormtroopers.
But hey, we still got I'm the spy.
Okay, I have to ask, Chris, what's your opinion on General Hux? Use 3 sentences, 4 if you have to.
Words or sentences?
It's another one of those moments that I feel like they're breaking the fourth wall way too strongly, killing him that early. I feel like there was so much negative sentiment towards the prank phone call that it's almost a direct result of that.
Fair.
Talk about a 2-movie setup of tension between these two characters, and that was the final payoff.
Because the prank phone call, it proved that he's not dangerous. He's not a force to be reckoned with.
No, he was
what
a boob.
Does episode
he
9
was
do?
A boob after 9.
Let's invent a new general that's scary and kill him immediately.
Yeah, with a pot shot, and he's over, and he's comic relief.
It's like they gave a form to everyone who watched The Last Jedi, and that's what they wanted.
Not only that, you gave okay, so you get a new character. You get him actually having some character development of he wants, he's helping the Resistance because he's out for himself.
Well, that's in the ending of The Last Jedi. He would that's a kind of a cool moment when he thought about shooting Kylo while he was down. But that's that's the only foreshadowing to that. But that's that was already sort of there, that he's just sort of vying for power and he thinks Kylo Ren's a basket case. But
yeah, they set that up in Force Awakens too, with them two going back and forth with each other. It was this constant power struggle. Yeah. But once you get the
payoff in this movie is he's a spy. Bang. No, wait, sorry. He's the spy. Bang.
It was a fun kill, but I'm not watching Friday the 13th, so
I mean, my gosh, those things. That's why those stormtroopers can't shoot anything. They have so much kick behind them. You have to be on top of somebody to kill them. It all makes sense now.
I will say that about this latest trilogy. Boy, the kick of the blasters has been priority since Force Awakens. Yeah. Immediately, everyone just flies so far with these things. When you watch Empire and those troopers get shot on Cloud City, they're just kind of crumple down and their little squib packs go off. Yeah, they barely move.
Same gun, same bowcaster.
Exactly, same gun, same everything. Yeah, the bowcaster, of course.
Yeah.
Maz gave him an upgrade.
They should have been flying off of Cloud City if they were shooting. If that's just going to update the movie.
Bashing through walls.
Don't tempt them to do a new special edition where that actually happens. But
the blaster shots we wanted to do in the original trilogy but couldn't. Now we're here. Anytime something gets nicked, it blows a gigantic hole and stuff.
Greedo goes flying through the cantina wall now.
Can you imagine if that was on Disney Plus, Empire Strikes Back, and it was George 5 years ago? Wow.
I like to imagine that the McClunky of The Empire Strikes Back is when Han Solo shoots Vader's hand, but instead of Vader stopping the blaster shots, Vader just goes flying out the window behind him. And Han looks at the blaster. Boba Fett looks too.
Or like he catches the blaster and somehow is moving with it like a cartoon, just flying through Cloud City. Like, well, how did we get here?
Do you think McClunky is totally because George was like, if we have a close-up of Greedo's face, it will look like really cool in 3D for like 2 seconds? Do you think that's all it was about?
I never thought about that we never did get to the original trilogy 3D releases. We only got episode 1. Oh, okay. All right.
They did 2 and 3. They showed them sometimes.
Yeah, they showed them at Celebration, right? Yeah.
Chris, you're in the know with collectors. Has the 3D cut of The Phantom Menace ever leaked? Like, does anybody have a copy of that, like in a private collection?
I've never heard of it, but in the crowds, the crowds I would hear from, they wouldn't prioritize something like that. They're really big on the collecting their Blu-ray version of 4K 77 right now. But
okay,
I've. It's funny you mentioned it. I almost took for granted that maybe there was a 3D Blu-ray of that, but I guess there never was, right?
No, I was always kind of waiting for that, but I think that got caught in the turmoil of the sale, because that was February 2012. That was the first thing
axed. That was something on the books, like episode 1 to come out, and then that was one of the first orders of business was cancel episode 2 in 3D.
But that was the weird the timing of that was peculiar too, because episode 1 3D came out February 2012, and then Lucasfilm slated episodes 2 and 3 for September 2013 in October 2013. And everyone couldn't make sense of why are they waiting like a year and a half to release
a month.
Yeah. Like that, considering that the special editions were released January, February, March of 1997.
I always had the presumption that they would release them every year and hitting the 40th anniversary. I think that would have lined up. I don't know, maybe not, but
yeah, I agree with you, Russ. Everyone thought it was weird that he didn't. It was like, why are you doing it in September? Because they were being released like from September to October, but they were going to be like 2 weeks away from each other. It was going to be like the last Friday of September of 2013, then like the second Friday of October 2013. And everyone's like, why? And this was back like during the spring of 2012. No one could figure out why they were doing this. And then
I'll get the prequels over with. Get them up quick.
I still think that episode 1 in 3D was Lucas's balloon test for selling to Disney. I think Disney wanted to see some current show of audience interest in Star Wars, in Lucas's way of proving to them that there was still money in this, in a broad sense, not just from the nerds like us, was to re-release the most like the most I'm trying to rephrase this the best way I can. The most well-known dislike Star Wars film. I think most Star Wars fans don't usually rank Attack of the Clones the lowest, but to the filthy casuals, The Phantom Menace is the one that's the quote-unquote most tarnished of all the
Jar Jar movie, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Lucas's way of proving to Disney that there was money here was to re-release that, and when that thing made like $45 million, it was like, okay, if this can make $45 million, there's no problem with Star Wars.
Yeah, maybe
that's at least my assumption, but who knows?
Yeah, it makes sense when you hear in Bob Iger's book they were talking about how he didn't have anything in production, so you could see him try to fire up something like that real quick.
Did I tell you guys I saw that at midnight in February 2012?
Yeah, I think I did too, but I just remember being severely underwhelmed by the 3D effect.
Some of it was good, other parts were like, what?
I mean, in general, I think post-conversion 3D is an absolute travesty, and anyone who considers themselves a film fan of any kind should never see anything that was post-converted, because it's going to hurt your eyes. It's not how it's supposed to look, and it wasn't shot in 3D, and you're seeing it slightly darker than you would if you just saw it the way it was filmed. So do yourself a favor and find out if it was shot in 3D.
God, I saw Solo in that like that. And if you think Solo is dark enough already, watching it in a bad theater and trying to watch it in 3D.
Yeah, I mean, it's offensive as a concept. It really is, because it's like if it would be so expensive to do it right that they're not, and you can tell by looking at it that they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3D was an interesting gimmick.
Well, when something's filmed in 3D, it actually looks 3D. It's unfortunate that when it seems that the movies that do that are usually stuff that people end up hating, like Avatar and the most profitable film ever, Avatar, that people hate. And then and the Hobbit trilogy was filmed in 3D. Like visually, it looked really cool, but what the heck was that, right? I don't know. They unfortunately spend that kind of money on films that they shouldn't.
Good old Pierre Jackson.
First three are good. All right.
All right, Chris, any other final words about The Rise of Skywalker before we wrap this up?
The Han Solo scene is good. They came very close to ruining the Emperor. It made me rethink a lot of life decisions, and I'm kind of like tacitly curious to if they do, and I really hope they put it on ice for like 5 years film wise. I don't think they will, but if they do that, I'm kind of excited for what the perspective of let's maybe try this with a little bit lower stakes and somebody who has a unique idea down the road. That's what I think. That could be good. I hope they don't rush back into it.
Okay, just because we have you here, with this whole thing of the High Republic, and we're probably going to delve into this in a later episode. What does that sound promising to you? I would imagine you've read that story, right?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a little bit like it's kind of a time period that wasn't heavily touched on in the old expanded universe stuff, and I think that's probably on purpose why they're sort of going there, because it's a super blank canvas. Like all the other expanded universe stuff that was previous was like thousands of years previous for the most part. What I don't like about it is sort of like if you're canon breaking wise, if you're sort of taking the version of the Old Republic that were presented in the prequels and A New Hope, there shouldn't have been a whole lot going on. It should have been a pretty peaceful time. So we'll see. I don't know. I wish they had just done that instead of Episode 7. I'll put it that way. But I'm kind of interested.
Like any Star Wars fan would be.
Yeah.
All right, Rus and Zenger, I would imagine we'll be discussing that in the coming weeks, and along with other Rise of Skywalker nonsense. But until then, anything else? Any other parting words of wisdom from you two?
As far as Rise of Skywalker, no. Well, I still enjoy it. Can't wait to go see it again. But everything else was said earlier.
I'm good.
All right.
Did Zenger like Rise of Skywalker?
That's a good question. Tune into the Knights of Vader sub-episode on ZengThis called The Rise of Skywalker Review to find out more.
We're going to do one more hour on Patreon, right, guys?
All right. Okay. I guess simple answer, I did enjoy it. There are problems with it, but if you sit there and just continue to tell yourself, Rus, if you would.
Remember all the runs!
Thank you. Good night. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
We don't know.
I meant this is the way, but okay. Yeah, that works too. We're all tired, people. Even the soundboard's tired.
This is the way.
Thank you. If you just keep telling yourself this is the way, I mean, I kind of side with Jim, to be honest, at times, in the whole, like, the original trilogy is, like, still my favorite thing, but I'm happy we're getting new Star Wars. Is it stuff I like all the time? There, is that a good enough answer?
Yeah, I think we all think very similarly, which is interesting. Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a great night.
No, thank you for putting up with us and having Zack tear out, I think, a little bit more of his hair today.
I want to point out that Chris reviewed us on like Apple iTunes, like Canada, and he has one of the greatest reviews we've ever gotten.
No. He does not. We are in the realm of the recent Saddam Hussein review, so do not speak ill of that, sir.
You know what? While I pull up Chris's review,
I remember it quite well.
What's with you?
Good old Saddam Hussein. I'll never get tired of that. That's weird. Oh, Knights of Vader is like ranked 191 like movie TV film in Mexico. Oddly enough, go figure.
We're going. We're getting there.
This is Chris's review of Knights of Vader from March of 2019, titled "Kool-Aid Free." Of all the Star Wars podcasts I've listened to, this one insults my intelligence the least. The host might find that surprising, but it's true. That's great. That's a fantastic review. I am proud to have that.
That is.
Oh my
I
God,
fully
thank
stand
you,
behind
Chris.
it to this day. Have a great night, guys.
So concludes this episode of the Knights of Vader, a Star Wars podcast. Check out the Facebook group, type in Knights of Vader into Facebook, and you will find us there waiting for you. Find us on Instagram at KOV Podcast. Shoot us an email, kovpodcast@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes or whatever podcasting platform you're currently listening to us on. Thank you to An Insperiority Complex for providing our theme song. Check out the show notes to hear more from them. If you're interested in a Knights of Vader t-shirt, once again, look at the show notes. For $22, you too can rep your favorite third-rate Star Wars podcast. For questions, comments, concerns, or snide remarks, contact me, Zack, on Twitter at Cinemoddities, or you can come hear me on the Cinemoddities podcast as we discuss Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, everybody's favorite Charlie's Angels film. That film is insane. Everyone should go watch it. But no, it's fantastic. No, shut your mouth. Be quiet. Crispin Glover's in. He goes past practically the greatest performance of his career. But when you're not watching Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, Zenger, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on the, I guess, subcategory of this podcast, the ZengThis podcast, where we apparently just talk about Knights of Vader the entire time.
As it should be. Russ, where can people check you out?
You can check me out on the Unbelievers Podcast, coming back for season 2 in a week or two. That's it.
Woot!
And Chris, when you're not being the 5th or 6th premier Canadian Star Wars collector, what are you up to?
You guys can find me in the lovely Knights of Vader Facebook group and on Instagram at the Chris Porteous.
Zach, just got some news. He's now the 7th best.
He went down?
It went down.
I feel like
tragic news.
I feel like this is like the stock market. It goes up or down. Sometimes he's 5th or 6th. Sometimes he's 7th or 8th. Sometimes
someone finished their transition run like right under the wire. Sorry.
Exactly. You know, it fluctuates a lot on an annual basis. You really shouldn't look at it more often than that.
Okay.
You have to be bullish to this.
Yeah.
Got to wait to close a market, I guess.
Oh, jeez. All right, everybody. Good night, but not goodbye. And as always,
Remember Alderaan! Down with the Empire!